Chapter 425 Xianxia Divine Dynasty. Sky Demon Great Sect. After the festival, Guan went to Mystic Valley on his own. He wasn't worried about Xianxia Emperor causing trouble in the Third Medicine Valley. If Xianxia Emperor dared to entertain such thoughts, Guan could make him disappear in an instant, even erasing all his karma, making all beings forget the Xianxia Emperor ever existed. When Xianxia and Jianghu saw Guan, they were extremely excited. Guan had initially planned to just go through the motions, but he didn't expect them to be so thrilled. Thus, Guan let the two of them demonstrate their recent cultivation results, then gave them guidance one by one, to their immense surprise and delight. After fussing around for an ancient hour, Guan finally entered the 8 scenic caves. He emerged from the grotto and in the distance, he saw the immense green vine tree, with a young woman in green, swinging under it. It was Jianghu. She was barefoot, with no jewelry on her hands, her long hair casually draped over her shoulders, exuding an aura of pure innocence, unlike her past demeanor as the demon cultivator of the Thousand Autumn Pavilion. She turned her head, and upon seeing Guan approaching, she couldn't help but snort coldly. As Guan drew near, Jianghu couldn't resist mocking, "Where were you indulging yourself last night?" Guan didn't indulge her and replied gruffly, "Do you need something from me? Aren't you the sect master of Jianghu sect? I heard your sect also celebrates the spring festival. Shouldn't you be overseeing everything?" "What's there to oversee? I've raised so many people. It's time I took a break," huffed Jianghu. She stood up, her feet pressing into the grass. Her eyes gleaming, she suddenly lifted her right foot, trying to brush the grass off onto Guan, but he dodged it. "So I've heard you calling yourself Sword Venerable Fudao?" Jianghu watched Guan closely, her eyes sparkling. She had intended to catch him off guard, yet Guan had still avoided it. This kid really was no ordinary person. Guan kept his distance and countered, "Indeed, what about it?" Jianghu obviously didn't believe it, because Sword Venerable Fudao had personally told her that Guan was his disciple. She only felt their master-disciple relationship was quite strong. "It seems Sword Venerable Fudao is ready to take action. Putting you in front, you should be careful. Even with him backing you up, beware of hidden attacks. When dealing with others, try not to be too impulsive," Jianghu cautioned. Guan helplessly responded, "Please, do I need you to teach me in this area? Who was it that got kicked out of the Taizong dynasty on the spot?" Jianghu was immediately displeased and started chasing after Guan, but no matter how she tried, she couldn't catch up. She got serious, chasing Guan at full speed, while he continued to evade her. As the chase went on, Jianghu fell into a profound state, seeing Guan as a series of shadows in her eyes. His figure and step technique seemed so agile and enticing. Who knows how much time had passed? Jianghu suddenly snapped awake to find herself under the green vine tree, while Guan was in front of her, practicing alchemy. She took a deep breath and asked, "What was that just now?" "A step technique. Once mastered, you could be unrivaled in the world," Guan answered casually without turning around. What he had taught was the eternal measuring heaven Tao step, an advanced version of the stepping path of ages step. Aside from himself, no one else had learned it yet. Towards Yilan and Zhenqin, Guan could only encourage them to pursue their cultivation level as far as possible, and to cultivate other Taoist sorceries only after reaching nirvana. Jianghu was different. Her maximum lifespan was over 5,000 years. She would certainly achieve nirvana, so learning divine skills in advance wouldn't delay her cultivation. "What's it called?" Jianghu asked curiously. Certain such a precise step technique had to be an inheritance from Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan glanced at her and said, "Eternal measuring heaven Tao step. Don't spread it around, or it'll bring big trouble, and I mean trouble from beyond this world." Upon hearing this, Jianghu became both nervous and excited. She eagerly pounced towards Guan. She hugged Guan tightly, wanting to plant a kiss on his face, but was blocked by his palm. Instead, she ended up kissing his palm, tickling him. "I haven't loved you for nothing, rest assured. I will definitely succeed," Jianghu said joyfully. Guan pushed her away and said, "Then you'd better start practicing now. To master this divine skill, I'm afraid it might take 1,000 or even 10,000 years." Jianghu didn't believe it and immediately got up to begin her cultivation. Guan turned his gaze back to the pill furnace. Below the pill furnace, the flames flickered, burning out only to reignite, continuously cycling through a state of reincarnation. With time flying like an arrow, Guan once again seated himself in front of the pill furnace, kindled the fire, and turned his head to look. Jiang Qiong's figure shifted about, resembling a white swan, elusive and difficult to track. She suddenly appeared beside Guan, her right hand to her forehead, followed by a fall, her hands clasping Guan's upper body, resting her head on his shoulder. Why, after 100 years of practice, can I still not even enter the threshold? Jiang Qiong said in anguish. It had been a century since she had received the eternal measuring heaven Tao step, and over the years, she diligently cultivated but failed to grasp it, so she came to Guan for advice. She had just demonstrated it, and with her mystic heart realm cultivation level, she couldn't even take 20 steps. Guan remained leaned upon and said, I've told you before, this divine skill isn't so simple to master. The fact that you can take so many steps already proves your diligence. Jiang Qiong sighed, dispirited. After resting for a while, she brought up worldly affairs. The reincarnation shadows brought by the primordial immortal king wreaked havoc everywhere in the mortal world, and they were given a unified name, Xianyu Wraiths. A century had passed, and rather than being eradicated, the Xianyu Wraiths had grown stronger and had even established the Xianyu Divine Dynasty. Apart from the Xianyu Divine Dynasty, a sect named the Sky Demon Great Sect appeared in the mortal world, supposedly all reincarnations of heavenly demons. While the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court were struggling against each other, they spared efforts to confront the Xianyu Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon Great Sect. Not only did they not succeed, but they also suffered repeated defeats, allowing the enemies to gain tremendous momentum. Now the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court had begun to cease their wars, turning their spears towards the Xianyu Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon Great Sect, and the mortal world faced new uncertainties. The Taitsong continent remained unaffected, but its sects saw this as an opportunity to vie for resources. Outside their realm, Sword Venerable Fudao would not protect them, nor would overseas powers indulge them. The Juhua sect was one among these, constantly expanding their reach. Last year, they encountered a demon of the Sky Demon Great Sect and lost tens of thousands of disciples in the fray. This incident enraged the Juhua sect, but the power gap made them wary of seeking revenge. Jiang Qiong was telling Guan all this not to seek help, but just to discuss the outside situation, and Guan had no intention of intervening. Over the years, the reincarnation vortex continually spawned Xianyu Wraiths, bolstering the strength of the Xianyu Divine Dynasty. Certainly, there were great karmic forces at play behind this. Who knows if the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court have really reconciled? They would do well to join forces and expel these two powers, otherwise, the consequences are unthinkable, Jiang Qiong said worriedly. Guan, while refining an elixir, replied, Don't worry, I will talk to the Yongxian Emperor. Jiang Qiong blinked in surprise and asked, Are you talking about the sovereign of the Immortal Dynasty? Yes, what about it? You're bluffing, making it sound as if you can meet him just like that. You think I can't? Even if you have Sword Venerable Fudao as your mentor, he's far away in the Immortal Dynasty. Heh, it'll take you to meet him today. Why don't you ask him yourself, okay? Guan rolled his eyes at Jiang Qiong, speaking in a mocking tone. She dared to look down on him. He was no longer the Ji family house servant of yesteryear. He had to show this woman some of his true power. Chapter 426. The Orthodox of Heaven and Earth. Guan brought Jiang Qiong to the Third Medicine Valley, and they made their way to the dojo. Along the way, Jiang Qiong looked around curiously, intrigued by the current state of the Third Medicine Valley. Since the news about Guan's connection with Sword Venerable Fudao had spread, more people had been coming to the Third Medicine Valley, and the Supreme Sect had expanded it, continuously increasing the number of disciples in the valley. Now, the number of Medicine Valley disciples had surpassed 4,000. At first glance, the Third Medicine Valley seemed like a sect. Jiang Qiong sensed many cultivators with a stronger presence than herself, which made her even more curious about Guan's current status. Guan approached a senior disciple from behind and tapped him on the shoulder, signaling him to leave. The senior disciple, upon seeing him, immediately felt relieved, quickly stood up to salute, then hurried away. Guan sat down and looked across at the Yongxian Emperor, asking, You've been here for 100 years, aren't you going back? Jiang Qiong stood next to Guan, casting a strange look towards Yongxian Emperor. Could it be that the Emperor of the Immortal Dynasty was him? Although the Yongxian Emperor had concealed his cultivation level, The sheer grandeur he emanated was extraordinary. Xianxia Emperor looked at Guan and smilingly asked, "Go back for what?" Comprehending the great Tao here is quite good. He had been in Third Medicine Valley for 100 years. Initially, he was curious why Sword Venerable Fu Dao would choose to stay hidden in such a modest place. But gradually, he was attracted to the lifestyle here. The disciples working, cultivating, falling in love. Their every action symbolized the laws of the great heaven and earth. Everything in this Medicine Valley seemed to contain some aspect of the Taoist intent. His feelings were not a mere illusion but were influenced by Guan's Tao fruit in the surroundings. The so-called Tao fruit is also a pathway of Tao, representing the fruits of chasing the Tao by living beings. Even though Guan had concealed his cultivation level, the aura of Shenyuan's Zai Xian still prevailed, and his Shenyuan Tao fruit also influenced everything around him. This was why the Medicine Valley disciples' cultivation speed was increasing, with geniuses emerging almost every year. These geniuses might not stand out in today's supreme sect but would have been famous 800 years ago and heavily nurtured by the sect. Guan was also aware of his own impact on the surroundings, unable to control it. He only opted to feign ignorance, kind of a care towards the people around. Now that the Xianyu Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon Great Sect have emerged, the threat to the Immortal Dynasty, the Holy Court, and even the whole world is not small, Guan stated, then glanced at Zhang Qiong. "You are normally quite talkative. Why the silence now?" Zhang Qiong was skeptical and didn't just blurt out anything, plus she never really intended to seek out the Yongxian Emperor. She just wanted a topic to discuss with Guan. Yongxian Emperor replied, "The world is in chaos, it's normal for variables to emerge, let them be." He watched Guan make his move on the board, his gaze subtly changing. He was about to win this game, but with Guan's move, the situation on the board shifted. Though it wasn't a resurrection from death, it made him sense danger. It seems the Immortal Dynasty is not shouldering the mission of all living beings, rather pursuing the victory of the major trends, Guan muttered with a slight smile. Yongxian Emperor perceived the implications in his words. He didn't avoid them but rather said, "In different periods, the targets pursued will vary. Whether it's the Immortal Dynasty or the Holy Court, when they first rose, they surely won the hearts of the people and shouldered the mission of protecting all living beings. But once you unify the world and become the Lord of all, you will become the common enemy of all beings in misery. There's no power in this world that can satisfy all living beings. From my perspective, the Immortal Dynasty should pursue other things, like the legitimacy of the great heavenly spirit land." Guan remembered the Immortal Dynasty's spirits once said that the Holy Court was established by beings from outer heaven. For the Immortal Dynasty, no matter how well the Holy Court did, they wanted to overturn it, as it concerned the honor and disgrace of the Immortal Dynasty. Some things are more important than peace. After hearing this, Guan made no comment. Different stances naturally lead to different perspectives on matters. Since Yongxian Emperor was already aware of the chaos in the outside world, that was sufficient. In Guan's eyes, both the Immortal Dynasty and the Holy Court were headed towards destruction. He could see far into the future. Everything has its destiny, including the current supreme sect he was in. Guan had no intention of making the supreme sect last forever, knowing that one day, as old friends departed, the sect would lose its significance to him. Without the supreme sect, he could still flourish elsewhere. He wasn't worried at all. The deeper he delved into causality and fate, the fewer burdens Guan felt. Of course, Guan did not resist this change in mentality. To live in this world, one should not be entangled by too many emotions and unnecessary worries. Zhang Qiong also pondered the words of Yongxian Emperor, curious about what he meant by the legitimacy of heaven and earth. Guan didn't linger. The current game couldn't be saved. His moves were just for play. He stood up and took Zhang Qiong to leave. Yongxian Emperor watched the few ingenious moves made by Guan, contemplative. A breeze swept into the Medicine Valley, lifting leaves that swirled towards the sky. Spring had departed and summer arrived, warming the lands of great heaven and earth. On this day, Guan rode the Blood Prison Great Saint, bringing an Xian to Immortal-seeking Island. The island master, Sun Hanfeng, personally greeted him, and soon, Hu Shaojian arrived too. With Guan's support, Hu Shaojian, now a cultivator of the void-crossing realm, despite years having passed and their relationship deepening, struggled to hide his excitement and joy in front of Guan, making it difficult for Guan to discern if it was an act. Guan asked Hu Shaojian to take an Xian and the Blood Prison Great Saint for a stroll, while he discussed matters privately with Sun Hanfeng. With them gone, Sun Hanfeng finally said. Master, demon cultivators from the Sky Demon Great Sect have been infiltrating Immortal-Seeking Island frequently lately. I sense trouble brewing. Only places like the Taitsong continent, protected by mighty beings, were relatively safe. Immortal-Seeking Island, despite its strong foundations, inevitably attracted covetous eyes. Guan had foreseen a tribulation awaiting Immortal-Seeking Island, which was why he had chosen to come. Do not worry, just manage the island calmly. No one will disturb Immortal-Seeking Island, Guan, holding his teacup, replied softly while blowing on the steam. Hearing this, Sun Hanfeng smiled. He was a disciple of Mortal World Peak, arranged by Guan to oversee Immortal-Seeking Island, and treated well by Guan. The benefits he reaped each year were not small, and now he truly valued Immortal-Seeking Island, not wanting mishaps to befall it. Shortly after, Sun Hanfeng brought up various other issues, mostly regarding internal disputes or power struggles on the island. Guan spent most of the time listening, and when Sun Hanfeng asked for advice, he did not hold back his opinions. When Sun Hanfeng finished, Guan gestured for him to leave. After Sun Hanfeng departed, Guan remained seated, looking out toward the blue sky, his gaze reaching beyond the heavens and earth. He was looking at an old friend. Tattered clouds hung like torn fabric across the sky, and figures exuding demonic chi hovered in midair. Among them, one with the most intense demonic chi had a giant red fireball and deep red chains wriggling like snakes behind him. Their eyes were all fixated on a ruined and solitary island below, where trees were toppled and the ground upheaved, creating a pockmarked landscape. Dressed in black, Leah stood atop a pile of rubble, with a sword in his right hand and Divine Exotic City in his left, while Divine Exotic Immortal Spirit perched on his shoulder. Zhao Xuehe, is that all the capacity you have? Capturing me won't be that easy, Leah taunted loudly, a cold expression between his brows. Zhao Xuehe stood in front of the red fireball, toying with the chains around him, an indifferent expression on his face, as he looked down at Leah. Leah, how long can you last relying on the power of Divine Exotic City? Join the Sky Demon Great Sect. Holy Court is not for you. You must sense the weariness of Holy Court. Without Xianxia, the chaos in Holy Court holds no merit for nurturing you. Leah frowned slightly upon hearing this. He had been in the holy position within Holy Court for many years but had not reaped significant benefits. Recently, the chief fortune of his position was extracted, making his cultivation unstable. He had no choice but to venture out, partly to clear his mind. As Zhao Xuehe raised his right hand towards the sky, he said, "The sect hierarch of Sky Demon Great Sect has yet to arrive here. When he does, he will transform this realm. There's not much time left for you. If you don't leave Holy Court soon, you'll perish along with it." Leah, frustrated, retorted, "So? Is living a lowly life really better than death?" At this, a fierce light flashed in Zhao Zuhi's eyes. Leah said no more and tossed Divine Exotic City upwards. Quickly enlarging, it enveloped the whole island, emitting black mist from which divine souls and peculiar ghosts emerged, even revealing a colossal figure wielding an axe, instantly suppressing the momentum of the Sky Demon Great Sect's side. Divine Exotic Immortal Spirit stood on Leah's shoulder, howling as if taunting the enemy. Zhao Xuehe huffed coldly, placing his right hand to his mouth, beginning to chant a spell. As he chanted, his own mana surged out, entering the red fireball behind him, which spouted explosions of intense flames and weird black spots wriggling on its surface. Just as the ghostly army burst forth from Divine Exotic City, the red fireball suddenly opened a chilling eye, freezing the whole realm as everything came to a standstill. While sipping tea, Guan observed that the Sky Demon Great Sect indeed possessed something powerful. Utilizing the power of the Silent Destruction Domain, he secretly passed mana to Divine Exotic Immortal Spirit. The stronger it became, the stronger Divine Exotic City would be, leading both parties into a stalemate. He had noticed some mighty beings stirring within the Silent Destruction Domain, eyeing the great heavenly spirit land. These entities only dared to peer and feared to step into great heaven and earth. This disappointed Guan. The Sky Demon Great Sect borrowed the power of the Silent Destruction Domain, while Xianxia Divine Dynasty tapped into the power of the Reincarnation Vortex. Both forces still tested the waters, uncertain whether they feared him or Xianxia. Guan indeed looked forward to their descent. If they provoked him, it would be the perfect time to harvest lifespans. Time swiftly passed. After battling for 2 ancient hours, Leah had escaped the encirclement, barely surviving this tribulation. However, Guan foresaw that Li Ya would be entangled in vendettas for many years to come. "Senior brother Li, the next millennium won't be easy for you," Guan murmured to himself, then stood up and walked outside the hall. Chapter 427. Divine Emperor's Descent. Autumn breezes wafted through Mystic Valley. Guan sat on a tree branch, looking down at the sparring in the forest below. Jianghu and Xianxia were engaged in a close contest of martial moves and movement techniques. The master and disciple evenly matched. Jianghu possessed a maximum lifespan of 4,800 years, while Xianxia's lifespan could reach 5,000 years. Talent-wise, there wasn't a large gap between the two. After many years of cultivation, Xianxia had grown significantly. When it came to hand-to-hand combat, he could fight Jianghu to a standstill. However, their sparring didn't interest Guan much. Despite watching them, his thoughts were actually on Li Ya. Since escaping from a desperate situation, Li Ya had been chased by the Sky Demon Great Sect. Fortunately, no particularly strong entities had set their sights on him yet, and the strongest among his pursuers were only at the wandering immortal realm. Li Ya was currently engaged in battle. Most followers within the Sky Demon Great Sect were reincarnations of heavenly demons, awakening their original souls, but there were also some infiltrators from outer heaven who had descended as demons, nearly all of whom had cultivation levels above the immortal Tao fourth layer heaven. After years of warfare with the immortal dynasty, the Holy Court's control over outer heaven was weakening. Guan lifted his gaze and saw figures coming and going from the great heavenly spirit land without anyone daring to block them. In such circumstances, the Sky Demon Great Sect was rising swiftly, spreading across the world like a wildfire. Guan's immortal seeking island would be affected in the future as well. Watching Li Ya battling fiercely, Guan's thoughts drifted to the future, contemplating an appropriate time to reap the growth of the Sky Demon Great Sect. Guan had no intention of blindly playing the savior, but if threatened, or if those he cared about were threatened, he would show no mercy. He lived in seclusion, but that didn't mean he would stand idly by. After observing Li Ya for a while longer, Guan's gaze shifted toward Anhao. Anhao was about to undergo nirvana. He was still imprisoned, waiting for the Xianxia Emperor to return. Once released, after his nirvana, Anhao would re-emerge into the world, embarking on the path of the heaven-favored. Compared to Li Ya, Anhao's journey would be smooth, continuing his past grace. Guan then turned his attention to other old acquaintances, and as he did, his thoughts suddenly turned to Xiaochuan and Yang Jian. Both had entered the reincarnation vortex, yet there had been no word from them, and Guan could no longer feel the destruction Dao seal on Xiaochuan's soul, indicating a great distance between them. After a long while, Jianghu came to the base of the tree, looking up to ask, "Master, how did we perform just now?" And Xianxia also walked over, expectantly looking up at Guan. Guan withdrew his divine thought, glanced at them, and said thoughtfully, "In truth, both of your growth rates are rapid, you can be considered geniuses. You don't need to be so tense. There's no need to prove anything to me. Strong or weak, as long as you don't betray me, I naturally won't abandon you." These two disciples had many merits, but every time they saw him, they became nervous, and they were eager to demonstrate their abilities, which made him feel uncomfortable. Upon hearing this, Xianxia smiled. Jianghu also let out a sigh of relief. Unlike Xian and Longqing, they had sought Guan for their own gain, so they could never be at ease in front of him, always maintaining a deep reverence for him. Guan then added, "In a while, I'll arrange for a disciple to spar with you. The two of you will take him on together, to broaden your horizons." On hearing this, Xianxia's eyes brightened as he asked, "Is it a disciple from the Third Medicine Valley?" They had naturally heard of the Third Medicine Valley, but had never been there. Even though Mystic Valley had a transmission array platform, the disciples from the two valleys were not permitted to use it for visits, a rule set by Guan himself. Anyone who violated this rule was expelled from Medicine Valley. "Yes, unlike the others, he's a direct disciple like you. This lad is combative, so don't underestimate him," Guan replied, and with that, he descended from the tree. Upon hearing this, Jianghu and Xianxia tensed up again. Guan somewhat helplessly said, "Don't be nervous. Even if you lose, it's normal. My aim is just to enhance your practical experience." The two exchanged a glance, then forced a smile, clearly strained. Guan found it dull and shook his head, then turned and walked away, refusing their offer to follow. Continue your cultivation. The tribulations of the world are increasing. Who knows, they might reach Mystic Valley one day, and then we'll need you two to guard Mystic Valley. Upon hearing Gu An's words, the pair stopped in their tracks, their fighting spirits suddenly ignited. They didn't believe Mystic Valley could be in danger. Clearly, this was Gu An's test for them. Guan made his way back to the Third Medicine Valley. As soon as he stepped from the transmission array platform, someone blocked his path. "I am Lu Changjing. I wish to have a word with the Valley Master if you may," said a middle-aged man standing before Guan, bowing respectfully. But before he could finish, Guan interrupted him. "Immortal Fall Gorge doesn't qualify." Guan walked past Lu Changjing, heading towards his loft. Immortal Fall Gorge was Lu Changjing's sect, a great sect on the seas. Guan knew of it through the causal threads he saw surrounding Lu Changjing. The strongest within Immortal Fall Gorge had attained the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm, which in Gu An's eyes, indeed did not qualify. Upon hearing Gu An's words, Lu Changjing's face flushed. He turned around, wanting to speak, but seeing Gu An's retreating figure, he dared not show anger or figure out how to retain him. For Guan to speak directly of Immortal Fall Gorge indicated he truly did not regard it highly. Is he Sword Venerable Fudao himself, or a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao? Lu Changjing frowned in thought. Being rejected was regrettable, but the thought that the other party might indeed be Sword Venerable Fudao filled him with excitement. The Sword Venerable Fudao was an existence comparable to the Xianxia Emperor. Lu Changjing took a deep breath and turned to visit the main city of sect of the Supreme Sect. As he turned around, a figure barred his way. He looked up and involuntarily furrowed his brows. This emperor has some connections with Immortal Fall Gorge. "Take me there," the Xianxia Emperor said indifferently to Lu Changjing. Overwhelmed by the Xianxia Emperor's imposing aura, Lu Changjing cautiously asked, "May I inquire who Taoist friend is?" "Xianxia Emperor, have you ever heard of him?" "What?" Lu Changjing's face changed dramatically. A look of terror etched on his features. Passing disciples who heard the three words, Xianxia Emperor, instinctively turned their heads to look, as the Xianxia Emperor with a wave of his sleeve, disappeared into thin air along with Lu Changjing. Far away, Xianxia, who was meditating under a tree, furrowed his brows, his eyes filled with a look of shock. That man was actually the lord of the immortal dynasty, the Xianxia Emperor. Over the past 100 years, he had played many games of chess with Xianxia Emperor and always found him inscrutable. He hadn't realized his origin was so extraordinary. If even the Xianxia Emperor would come to spend a century in the Third Medicine Valley, what kind of legendary figures might appear in the future? Xianxia turned his head towards where Guan stood, feeling that Gu An's silhouette was so majestic as if he could bear the weight of the heavens collapsing. 30 years later. At the subsect of Supreme Sect, Yi Mansion. Gu An and Yi Lan were enjoying tea in the courtyard. The fragrance of the tea pervaded the air, attracting several spirit birds to perch on the branches. It was a rare occasion without Zhen Qin causing a nuisance. Gu An and Yi Lan were both enjoying the moment. With one hand propping her chin, Yi Lan looked at Guan and asked with a smile. "Recently, Su Jie from your Third Medicine Valley has become quite famous. Even the news has reached our subsect, hasn't it?" "That kid's talent is indeed outstanding. He's really brought honor to the Third Medicine Valley," Guan responded with a smile. Su Jie had become a master disciple after only 5 years in the Third Medicine Valley. Guan did not give him personal guidance. He received the same treatment as the other disciples. This resulted in Su Jie not having a strong sense of belonging to the Third Medicine Valley, treating it merely as a stepping stone in his journey of cultivation. Su Jie was not particularly enthusiastic about Sword Venerable Fudao, and Guan even heard him privately telling other disciples that he would surpass Sword Venerable Fudao one day. Yi Lan chuckled, "More and more geniuses have emerged from the Third Medicine Valley over the years, and your disciples all show up under my command." Her eyes held admiration as she looked at Guan. Even setting aside the fact that Guan was a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao, she had always respected his own capabilities. Ever since they were young, it seemed there was nothing that her senior brother couldn't do. "Then I'll have to trouble you to look out for them more," Guan replied with a smile and picked up a piece of pastry from the table, which was made by Yi Lan herself. Although the taste was not particularly delicious, the sentiment behind it meant the most. Yi Lan curiously asked, "Would you say Su Jie is your most outstanding disciple?" Su Jie, with his lifespan limit of 9,000 years and dazzling talent, was someone Yilan also wished to recruit. Guan shook his head and said, "How could that be? My most talented disciple is currently making a breakthrough." "Oh, breaking through to which realm?" "The Nirvana realm." "The Nirvana realm? Impossible. You're joking, right? Isn't this disciple much older than you?" "Not at all, he's 34 years younger than me." "Someone over 800 years old breaking through to the Nirvana realm? I don't believe it. You're teasing me again," Yilan exclaimed with skepticism. She had never heard of anyone succeeding in reaching the Nirvana realm before 1,000 years of age. Guan laughed, offering no further explanation. He was talking about An Hao, who was undergoing tribulation with the help of immortal spirits from the immortal dynasty, and even the Xianxia emperor himself was present to witness his tribulation. Boom! The sound of thunder rolled in from the skies. Yilan looked up to see dark clouds rushing in, carrying the potential to envelop the heavens. Yilan teasingly asked, "That wouldn't be the celestial phenomena triggered by the breakthrough of that disciple of yours, would it?" Guan also looked up and said, "Of course not. However, this commotion is indeed caused by a breakthrough." The holy minister was making a breakthrough, advancing to the free immortal realm. Guan sensed it was going to be an interesting event. With the eruption of this phenomenon, many powerful existences quickly flew towards the holy court. The immortal dynasty, the Xianxia divine dynasty, and the sky demon great sect certainly wouldn't let the holy minister have a peaceful tribulation. After a quick calculation, Guan realized that the future held new variables. A free immortal could change the fate of the world. Yilan's eyes sparkled with curiosity upon hearing Guan's words. What kind of realm was capable of causing such a breakthrough phenomenon? It was at that moment that Guan saw a powerful aura coming from the depths of the cosmos. A meteorite wrapped in demonic chi was hurtling out of the silent destruction domain, bearing down on the great heavenly spirit land with unstoppable force. Such momentum suggested it had the cultivation level of the 9th layer of the free immortal realm. Guan hadn't been particularly concerned, for in recent years, there had been more than a handful of free immortals arriving in the great heavenly spirit land. But suddenly, he felt a familiar presence. This aura was the Annihilation God Emperor. With memories of Long Zhan, Guan vividly remembered the aura of the Annihilation God Emperor. Indeed, this aura belonged to him, albeit not as powerful as what Long Zhan remembered. Chapter 428 Long Qing's fear holy minister broke through. Annihilation God Emperor descended. Guan recalculated the momentum of great heavenly spirit land and found that the future became blurred. Many things could not be thoroughly predicted. Most critically, Guan was unclear about the purpose of the Annihilation God Emperor's visit to the great heavenly spirit land. Long Zhan was from an era far distant from his own, with the battle court he established becoming ancient legend, making the Annihilation God Emperor only stronger than before. How could he not be wary? Even if this presence of the Annihilation God Emperor was just the aura of the free immortal, Guan believed that his true form would be an incredibly tricky existence. Under Guan's watch, the meteorite carrying the aura of the Annihilation God Emperor rapidly approached the great heavenly spirit land. The powerful beings within the great heavenly spirit land were also alarmed by the Annihilation God Emperor, all using divine thought and divine sense to probe, but no one dared to obstruct the Annihilation God Emperor. Within the holy land of the holy court, vast heavenly thunder covered tens of thousands of miles of sky. The holy minister amidst the tribulation looked up, his eyes revealing a wary expression. He knew his crossing of tribulation would bring trouble, but he had not expected such a powerful being to come. The aura of the Annihilation God Emperor reminded him of the primordial immortal king from before. He cursed the heavens for being unfair, but at this point, he could only grit his teeth and break through. Once the heavenly tribulation began, there was no turning back. Either die or succeed in crossing. He leveraged the chi fortune of the holy court to break through. He could not afford to lose, because if he failed, the entire holy court would suffer greatly. Chi fortune connecting every living being of the court. Rings upon rings of grand formations guarded the holy minister, dazzling and emitting vast and infinite pressure, countering the heavenly might, stirring chaos in the heaven and earth rules, which also caused the surrounding mountains and oceans of the holy court to trigger cataclysms. Under the holy minister's gaze, a meteor streaked across the sky, the celestial thunder unable to obscure the meteor's brilliance. At this moment, not only the holy minister saw the meteor, Great cultivators and demons from various powers across the land also saw it. Inside Yi Mansion, Yi Lan also saw the meteor crossing the horizon, and for some reason, she felt an unexplained palpitation. She couldn't help but look towards Guan and asked, "Did you see that meteor just now?" Guan nodded, said, "Did you make a wish?" Yi Lan gave him a glance, a worried expression across her brow, said, "At that moment just now, I was inexplicably scared." Could it be another demon from outer heaven descending? Guan chuckled and said, "What's there to fear? When has the Supreme Sect ever encountered such calamity? I've always felt quite at peace. The danger lies in the overseas realms." "That's not the right way to think. We can't always rely on others. The sword Venerable Fudao will leave eventually." Yilan shook her head. Guan offered comfort, said, "I am the sword Venerable Fudao, don't worry." She laughed upon hearing this, said, "Really? Then can Senior teach me divine skills? It's not impossible, say something nice." "Want to hear something nice?" Yilan gave Guan a flirtatious smile, then stood up and walked towards him. Guan hurriedly raised his hand and said, "I was joking." "Humph, I took it seriously." Boom, the meteor, enshrouded in blazing flames, shattered the sea of clouds, crashing down upon the mountains with terrifying momentum, instantly crushing miles of mountains and forests. Bright light bursting forth, rolling dust rose into the air, like a massive wall of dust pushing towards the distance, destroying everything in its path. The earth shook and trembled, as if it were the apocalypse. As this force spread to the horizon, terrifying waves of flame emerged at the center of the explosion, seeming to burst through the sky. This power from beyond wreaked havoc on all upon the land, merciless and brutally cruel. After an unknown period, the roaring between heaven and earth ceased, but the rolling dust continued to churn, just without its former intensity. A figure stepped out from the dust, clad in a black robe overlaid with black scale armor shimmering with a cold light. He wore a fierce helmet with two horn-like blades pointing to the sky. Below the helmet there was no face, only pitch blackness, akin to a lifeless black hole. With each step, the gravel beneath his feet turned to dust. The surface revealed magma patterns, terribly fearsome. He stopped walking, looked up, still pitch black under the helmet, without eyes. It was unclear what he was looking at, or perhaps what he was sensing. He shifted his left foot to the side, instantly dispersing the dust between heaven and earth, revealing the wounded land. Shocking to behold, he stood within a massive crater, over 100 miles wide. Outside the crater, the land was littered with rocks and crevices, barren and desolate. Not just the dust on the land. Even the sky suddenly cleared. The Annihilation God Emperor turned his head towards the distance. After looking for several moments, he turned and walked away. With one step, his figure shifted millions of miles. The land was boundlessly vast. He took 5 continuous steps and still had not reached the edge of the continent. He arrived at a cliff, where the area was still trembling. Following his gaze downward, a city below the cliff was collapsing, and the mortals were wailing and crying, their misery extreme. The Annihilation God Emperor remained silent for a while, then suddenly waved his sleeve, and the earth regained its calm. Pieces of rubble and wooden pillars rose and flew toward the distance. After doing all this, he disappeared on the cliff. The cries beneath the cliff abruptly ceased, and the whole world fell into silence. In the evening, Guan entered the Third Medicine Valley, watching the Annihilation God Emperor travel the other side of the world, temporarily unable to discern his purpose. The Annihilation God Emperor did not head toward the Holy Court, indicating that he was not attracted by the Holy Minister's tribulation. He seemed more like he was searching for something. Perhaps it was no coincidence, fearing the Holy Minister's tribulation might affect what he was seeking. As soon as Guan entered the valley, Long Qing hurried over, his face eager to please, expressing concern and warmth. "Get lost. If you can't comprehend, it means the time isn't right, and your mindset is still not stable." Guan glared at Long Qing and said thus. Within the Supreme Sect, many believed Guan was a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao, but many disciples within the Third Medicine Valley, including Long Qing, thought Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao himself. This was also confirmed by Xianxia, who now showed extreme respect for Guan, entirely in the manner of a junior. "How long must I wait? Why do I have to wait?" Long Qing asked indignantly. Guan suddenly thought of something. Could it be that the Annihilation God Emperor was here for Long Qing? It was very likely. Guan said sternly, "You already know your physique is special. Can't you guess that you might be carrying a significant cause and effect?" If you don't settle down, you'll face great trouble, and even I won't be able to protect you, possibly not even the whole world. His tone was severe, causing Long Qing to be stunned. As Long Qing reflected on Gu An's words, he couldn't help feeling uneasy and panicked. Guan was influencing his emotions with his Taoist intent. He had to scare the young man. Without absolute certainty, Guan dared not let Long Qing reveal his true identity. The cause and effect of the Dragon Clan were too significant, likely to draw the real body of the Annihilation God Emperor and the current battle court. Long Qing's expression shifted uncertainly, but Guan did not continue to frighten him and instead walked past him. Just a few steps away, an Xian arrived, reporting that some disciples were fighting and needed his intervention. Hearing the names of the fighters, Guan understood why an Xian had to seek him out. Two geniuses. Ranked among the top in talent within the valley, they had not yet completed their training, but already great cultivators and notable families were trying to recruit them. It's typical of geniuses, they tend to be arrogant, and when arrogant individuals meet, conflicts are inevitable. Guan followed an Xian, not feeling troubled, his thoughts still on the Annihilation God Emperor. The setting sun was like blood, but it didn't add a touch of tragedy over Third Medicine Valley. It was still full of vitality. The Holy Minister's tribulation eventually led to a great battle, with the Immortal Dynasty, Xianxia Divine Dynasty, Sky Demon Great Sect, and a few forces bearing grudges against the Holy Court all attacking together. The battle was spectacular, prompting even Guan to watch. Despite the perilous process and countless casualties, the Holy Court survived the ordeal, and in the end, the Holy Minister made a breakthrough and even fought a great battle with Xianxia Emperor. Although the Holy Minister was a civilian official, his combat strength was formidable, able to hold his ground against the Xianxia Emperor, which surprised Guan. The Xianxia Emperor did not entangle further, otherwise, his alliance with the Xianxia Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon Great Sect's Free Immortal might have been able to eliminate the Holy Minister. This battle passed, but it also laid down a greater cause of trouble for the future. Thus, Great Heavenly Spirit Land welcomed a brief period of peace. 8 years quickly passed. One day, Guan, accompanied by an Xian and Blood Prison Great Saint, arrived at Xianxia Valley. Xian had unexpectedly returned, specifically to seek out Guan. Before meeting with Xian, Guan collected medicinal herbs first. Xian took him into his cave and after activating the cave's restrictions, asked nervously, "Are you Sword Venerable Fu Dao?" Chapter 429 Heavenly Dao has its own fixed number facing Xian's inquiry. Guan raised an eyebrow and said, "So the news has reached your ears?" Xian crossed his arms in front of his chest, chuckling proudly, "Of course. That's really slow." "What?" Xian's smile froze, uncertain of what to say. If it were anyone else, he would have responded with a kick, but facing Guan, what could he do? Endure, that's what. Guan found his expression amusing, so he pretended to be mysterious and said, "That's right, I am Sword Venerable Fu Dao. However, many people don't believe it and think that I am just a disciple of Sword Venerable Fu Dao. You must keep this matter between us. Heaven knows, earth knows, you know, and I know." Upon hearing this, Xian became excited. His body trembled as he asked carefully, "Is it true? Why, let me know." Guan's gaze deepened as he said, "Even though you are no match for me, in my eyes, you are the only one who poses a threat to my talent. And how doesn't have what it takes? He's too compliant and will stumble eventually. Only those prodigies who survive can be considered strong." Xian was deeply moved, his fists clenched and blood boiling with excitement. Guan was satisfied with his reaction. Winning people over with just a few words. Why not? Then, Guan went and sat down at a stone table to the side. Xian snapped back to reality and hurried to follow. Sitting across from Guan, Xian asked nervously, "Is it your talent, or are you the reincarnation of a great power, or have you concealed your age?" Guan looked at him and replied, "When you reach the Immortal Path Realm, you'll understand a stage called Reincarnation Tribulation." Reincarnation Tribulation? Xian was captivated just by the name. Guan asked, "You didn't come to find me just to confirm this, did you?" He could guess Xian's purpose, but he preferred to hear Xian say it himself. Xian took a deep breath and said, "The Xianxia Divine Dynasty has invited me to join. Lately, I've been thinking about breaking away from His Majesty. What's your view on the Xianyu divine dynasty? Guan knew about the rift between LV Xian and Li Xiandao. As Li Xiandao was becoming stronger, he began to reveal his true nature, like Guan, and became increasingly domineering, which added to the pressure on those around him. Guan replied, "If you want it as a stepping stone, then it indeed is a good place. But if you plan to stay with the Xianyu divine dynasty, they will all go up in smoke." LV Xian's eyes widened as he asked, "The Xianyu divine dynasty will be destroyed?" Guan chuckled. "To be more precise, all the powers of this world will go up in smoke, the old forces will turn to dust." "Including the supreme sect, Taizong dynasty?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because the world has its cycles, and the heavenly Tao has its set parameters." Doesn't that mean all my efforts are meaningless?" LV Xian turned pale, completely disheartened. Guan shook his head, his words laden with profound meaning. "Someone always survives. But think about it, if all the powers of the world disappear and 99% of beings turn to dust, and you survive, then after weathering that period, what will your status be in this world?" Excitement shone on LV Xian's face as he thought more about it. He was so elated at the idea of being one of the supreme beings of the world that he even ignored how he would survive to that point. His gaze towards Guan changed, filled with admiration. What level of cultivation was needed to foresee such an outcome? He didn't doubt Guan's words because he had also heard legends about the evolution of the world. Many cataclysms had swept through the world since ancient times. From what he could see, the world was far from destruction. At least there were no signs in sight. Indeed, Sword Venerable Fudao was the most formidable. Even the Yongxian Emperor couldn't compare. LV Xian became exhilarated and started pressing for more information. Guan did not reveal more about the fortune of heaven and earth, but regarding some trivial information that he could disclose, he considered it taking care of LV Baishan's son. Half an ancient hour later, Guan, accompanied by LV Xian, walked out of the cave. Luo Han watched LV Xian's respectful demeanor and couldn't help but laugh. This LV Xian was so proud by nature that even the emperor had never been shown such reverence. It was unknown what abilities this young Guan possessed to make a proud figure like LV Xian submit. Luo Han watched from a distance, then approached them. "Guan, where is the book?" asked Luo Han as he reached Guan. Guan casually took out Dream of the Red Chamber and handed it to him, saying, "Green Hero Travel will be after a while. The author went out to make a breakthrough." Luo Han's old face turned red as he said, "What Green Hero Travel? I just like Dream of the Red Chamber." LV Xian asked curiously, "What is Green Hero Travel?" Dream of the Red Chamber. He knew of it because being interested in Guan, he had read all of Guan's writings. An Xian walked over and, hearing their conversation, couldn't help but look at Luo Han with an odd expression, causing Luo Han extreme embarrassment, wishing he could find a crack in the ground to hide in. After Guan left Tianya Valley with an Xian and Blood Prison Great Saint, an Xian began disparaging Luo Han, saying she hadn't expected the esteemed Luo Han to read such vulgar books. Guan looked ahead, filled with dissatisfaction. Stinking girl, daring to scold indirectly. He'd have to make her suffer a bit when guiding her cultivation later. In the wilderness, a gentle breeze blew. And Hao, dressed like a wandering swordsman, strolled along a mountain path with his hands raised, his sword scabbard resting on his shoulders through the crook of his arm, his head tilted back, looking carefree. After attaining the Nirvana realm, he had completely shed his youthful naivety, and now exuded an inscrutable aura, embodying the elegance of a high-level practitioner. A gust of wind blew towards him from up front, rustling in Hao's hair. His half-closed eyes suddenly opened wide. He looked towards the top of the hill in front of him, where a towering figure stood, its black robe fluttering in the wind. Annihilation God Emperor. And Hao found that he couldn't see the stranger's true face, which meant that the stranger either possessed an extremely high cultivation level or had some kind of treasure on him. He believed the former was more likely. And Hao, who had traveled far and wide for many years, had encountered many powerful beings, yet none were as mysterious and formidable as the person before him. He was not afraid and continued walking forward. The Annihilation God Emperor stood still on the hilltop. As an Hao passed by him, the God Emperor suddenly said, "Your life grid is extraordinary, you are destined not to belong to this world." And Hao stopped in his tracks, didn't turn his head, and instead gazed at the distant rugged mountains, asking, "Oh? To which world do I belong then? To a higher realm. Once you transcend the 9 heavens of the immortal path, you'll be able to go there. Is that so? May I ask if your excellency comes from that realm? And Hao did not sound surprised. His tone as calm as ever. The Annihilation God Emperor turned around. And Hao turned to face him, only 5 steps apart. Looking under the God Emperor's helmet at the pitch darkness, and Hao felt wary but not intimidated. Even before Nirvana, and Hao often faced beings far surpassing his own realm. No matter where he was, he had never been afraid. He had long regarded life and death indifferently. Suddenly, a purple vortex appeared under the Annihilation God Emperor's helmet. And Hao unconsciously looked at it, his gaze changing and losing its brightness. Chapter 430. The strongest loneliness. And Hao had a dream in which he found himself seated upon an immensely grand chair, with a qilin crawling at his feet and true dragons swirling around his hands. Below him was a radiant starry sky, and figures exuding powerful auras floated beneath him like a series of steps. The sensation was incredibly wonderful. He felt as if he had control over everything and even experienced a sense of loneliness. Immersed in this feeling, he lost track of time. He did not know how much time had passed when suddenly, a dazzling golden light burst from the depth of the universe below and rushed towards him, turning the powerful figures along its path into ash. The golden light shone on Hao's face, making it feel scorching hot to the point of burning. And Hao suddenly opened his eyes, gasping for breath with sweat covering his forehead and his pupils still trembling. What met his gaze was the twilight sky, and his eyes instinctively caught the sight of the figure of the Annihilation God Emperor. The Annihilation God Emperor stood nearby, gazing up at the sky, seemingly lost in thought. And Hao sat up and was about to stand when the Annihilation God Emperor's finger pressed on his forehead, rendering him immobile. At that moment, and Hao felt his mana and chi blood freeze, making him extremely uncomfortable. Having reached the Nirvana realm, he had felt so powerful, confident to handle anything. But at that moment, he felt as if he had returned to the mortal realm, feeling his own insignificance once again. He looked up at the Annihilation God Emperor, his expression of shock rapidly turning into one of resentment. You have the same look in your eyes as he did, possessing the same life grid, but you are still far from his level, the Annihilation God Emperor said, looking down at Hao. And Hao gritted his teeth and asked, "Who is he? His name cannot be mentioned. This entire great heaven and earth cannot bear its consequences. If mentioned, this great heaven and earth would instantaneously turn into nothingness." And Hao's eyes widened. It was the first time he heard of such power. Neither the Xianxia Emperor nor Holy Heaven could achieve such feats. Having traversed so many great heaven and earths, it is rare to encounter someone with such a grand life grid as yours. I grant you a divine skill. Now it remains to be seen how high you can reach. As he spoke, the Annihilation God Emperor's index finger emitted demonic chi, which burrowed into Hao's forehead. And Hao, unable to move, was extremely nervous. As the demonic chi entered his body, he did not feel any discomfort, which made him even more uneasy. The Annihilation God Emperor withdrew his hand and said, "What you saw earlier were the memories of that being. Remember that sensation. It is the power you must strive with all your might to pursue." With those words, the Annihilation God Emperor vanished from the spot. And Hao, then freed from constraint, swiftly got up. He could no longer sense the presence of the Annihilation God Emperor. Not a trace was left, as if everything he had experienced was just an illusion. Who exactly is he? And Hao furrowed his brows, touching his forehead subconsciously, feeling that he had gotten himself into big trouble. Meanwhile, far away in the Third Medicine Valley, Guan withdrew his gaze. When the Annihilation God Emperor approached Hao, he had been paying attention. This Annihilation God Emperor was merely a free immortal in terms of cultivation level. If he dared to harm Hao, Guan could eradicate him even faster, but it seemed as though the Annihilation God Emperor intended to bring an opportunity to Hao. After the Annihilation God Emperor left, Guan checked Hao's fate once more and found that his future had changed. Hao was already on the path of the chosen, but after receiving the legacy from the Annihilation God Emperor, Hao grew even stronger, which reminded Guan of Long Zhan and Lu Han, who could just barely surpass him. What exactly is the origin of the Annihilation God Emperor? What does a higher realm refer to? Guan looked up, and beyond the outer heaven was the universe, surrounded by the silent destruction domain. The entire universe seemed infinitely vast, with no end to be seen in any direction. His gaze involuntarily fell upon the boundary gate, guarded by the heavenly spirit god. Perhaps to reach beyond the universe, one must pass through that gate. But, approaching the boundary gate would mean destruction by the heavenly spirit god, a terrifying existence capable of effortlessly annihilating the Taoist hidden immortal. Guan then thought of the immortals he had encountered. It seemed that there were even more terrifying and vast beings above the immortal path. Master, the sect leader is here to see you. A disciple ran up to Guan and whispered. Guan, standing in front of a wooden railing, withdrew his gaze and nodded to the disciple, then walked towards his loft. Returning to the room, Guan saw LV Batian, who immediately rose to greet him. I've told you so many times, there's no need for such formality, it feels so alienating, Guan complained. As LV Batian watched him walk over and sit down, he finally spoke. I was ignorant before. Knowing your true identity now, proper courtesy must be observed. Guan's face remained unchanged, but he was pleased inside. Old LV really understood people's hearts. He invited LV Batian to sit and asked why he had come. Your disciple, Su Jia, had a conflict with a family. It was a misunderstanding, and I have had the family release him and have tried hard to ease the relationship. However, Su Jia is still unhappy, LV Batian began, his face showing helplessness as he spoke. Due to the prior incident with the Wu Ju, LV Batian dared not be careless. With such extraordinary talent, Su Jia likely had Guan's guidance behind him. He had to handle the situation carefully. Guan replied nonchalantly, if he's unhappy, so be it. The supreme sect must not indulge him. LV Batian pondered the underlying meaning of Guan's words and responded. He's still young after all, and his talent is indeed rare. He reminds me of Hao in his earlier years. Mentioning Hao made him think of an Xian, and his expression turned strange. When many things were connected, they seemed so absurd. He also wondered what Hao's feelings would be if he knew all this. Hao didn't know who his own master was, only knowing that his master had transformed into sword venerable Fudao. Are there a shortage of geniuses in this world now? Just treat him normally. No need to consider me. He is just a passerby from the Third Medicine Valley and has not truly become my disciple, Guan said carelessly. Hearing this, LV Batian became even more interested in Su Jia. Without the guidance of sword venerable Fudao, Su Jia had still shown such talent. Such a genius must be properly cultivated. The key was to bring him under his command, to become his strength. Seeing Guan truly uninterested in Su Jia, LV Batian started discussing other matters, hoping Guan would provide guidance for the future development of the Supreme Sect. A full ancient hour passed before LV Batian finally left. Guan personally saw him down the stairs. Before parting, the two kept bowing to each other, causing nearby disciples to talk. Guan looked at LV Batian's departing figure and noticed that LV Batian's karma had changed. Killer calamity. He immediately calculated LV Batian's life grid and his expression became strange. Due to his words today, LV Batian would face calamity. LV Batian would find death due to Su Jia. Chapter 431. Involuntarily in Guan's projections, LV Batian would focus on nurturing Su Jia in the future, treating him as the next sect leader to be groomed, and even betroth the daughter of the LV family's patriarch to Su Jia, as if she were his own child. Su Jia did not disappoint LV Batian. His growth rate was not inferior to Hao's, and he, too, took Hao as his target. 500 years later, when Hao returned, Su Jia, overrating his own ability, challenged Hao. Even though Hao suppressed his cultivation level, he still easily defeated Su Jia. After that, Su Jia's personality drastically changed, becoming paranoid. He practiced cultivation even more diligently, treating getting stronger as the most important thing. He even schemed for LV Batian's defying fate divine skill and eventually succeeded in persuading LV Batian to pass on the skill to him. After the transmission of the skill, LV Batian became a cripple and returned to the LV family, only to have the LV family attacked by Su Jia's enemies. In that chaos, LV Batian died. Although Guan could see the future, he was not panicked, because he knew these events would occur only if he did not intervene. To deduce cause and effect, one must set oneself aside, an approach that allows for more accurate foresight. This is why many who are aware of their heavenly destiny refuse to engage in worldly affairs, because they cannot predict the choices they would make in the future, and thus they try not to change the course of the world. Guan was not displeased with Su Jie because of this. He was more reflective on both of their fates. LV Baishan's choice to choose Su Jie brought disaster upon himself, and it wasn't that Su Jie intended to harm him. It could only be said that fate was playing tricks on people. One thought can turn one into a demon or make one an immortal, but who really knows whether their own thought is right or wrong? Guan muttered to himself, truly moved. Downstairs, the blood prison great saint looked up, pondering the words of his master. Could it be that LV Baitian was about to become a demon? That would be just great. The blood prison great saint had no fondness for LV Baitian at all. Knowing that LV Baitian might be in trouble, he only felt schadenfreude, even looking forward to LV Baitian disappointing Guan. After watching for a while, Guan turned and walked back inside the house. Night fell, and the lights of the third medicine valley lit up one after another, revealing the mortal world's charms. 20 years later. In the third medicine valley, the sunlight was bright, birds circled above, and the shapes of disciples practicing cultivation could be seen everywhere, with supreme sect disciples riding demon birds flying across the sky. Guan lay underneath the mystic pure tree with his hands behind his head, looking at his attribute panel. Name, Guan. Lifespan, 899/1, 393, 608, 114. Physique, Mixed Yuan Dao Golden Body. Cultivation level, Perfect Shen Yuan Zi Zai Immortal Realm, almost 1.4 billion years of lifespan and close to 900 years old. Guan, looking at his age, felt the passage of time, unaware of how old he had grown. Yet his mentality remained young, and he was still able to converse with some of the younger disciples. The fat as a buffalo white spirit rat came over and nuzzled his waist with its head, in a flattering manner. Guan paid it no attention. It followed and circled to his front and said in a low voice, "Master." It spoke in a childlike voice, indistinguishable between male or female. Last year, the white spirit rat had just learned to speak the human language. Its growth also brought liveliness to the third medicine valley. Almost every disciple who entered the valley had been bullied by it. It had a strong presence in the third medicine valley, and the disciples respectfully kept their distance. After all, it was the master's demon pet. They couldn't fight back even if bullied by it. "Spit it out if you have something to say," Guan said impatiently, looking at the white spirit rat with annoyance. The creature had recently been pestering him to raise a batch of female rabbit demons, which he found quite disgraceful. How could he, so esteemed and virtuous, have raised such a demon pet? Guan thought of the 3 Tianyao sisters and the deep-sea dragon carp, seeming somewhat abnormal as well. In contrast, the blood prison great saint was quite steady. He would focus on nurturing the blood prison great saint from now on. "Master, I had a dream earlier where I was cultivating, and I still remember. It was a fist technique. Would you take a look?" The white spirit rat said softly, its beady eyes filled with excitement. Because of its obesity, it lacked the cunning look of a rat demon, appearing rather foolish instead. Guan sat up and said, "I want to see what fist technique you can comprehend." The white spirit rat spent years meditating under the mystic pure tree, consuming heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and its maximum lifespan kept increasing. In a way, this was also a talent, as not everyone could increase their lifespan just by being under the mystic pure tree. The white spirit rat jumped aside and then stood up, supporting its body on its fatty hind legs. Under Guan's gaze, the white spirit rat started to perform fists. As it threw its punches, gusts of wind kicked up the grass, drawing the attention of nearby disciples. Guan's expression was odd. The white spirit rat's fist technique was not impressive, clearly mimicking Long Qing's moves, yet a mountain of flesh-throwing punches was very bizarre. To say it was comical, but its body moved rhythmically. Each punch was executed with precision. After the white spirit rat had demonstrated a set of fist techniques, it turned to look at Guan with a hopeful expression. Guan pondered for a moment and said seriously, "Not bad, you can challenge Qing'er now." Upon hearing this, the white spirit rat was overjoyed and immediately bade farewell to Guan. It was off to challenge Long Qing. After sending off the white spirit rat, Guan continued to lie down, enjoying his leisure time. Doing nothing but lying there was quite interesting too. However, this peaceful life was about to be shattered. The Annihilation God Emperor, who had been traveling the mortal world, had already arrived at the Supreme Sect. Judging by his pace, it would only be a matter of time before he entered the Third Medicine Valley. Wherever the Annihilation God Emperor went among crowds, he would disguise himself as a cultivator, and so he did at the Supreme Sect. With 1,000 faces for 1,000 people, no one could remember the visage he had transformed into. Time continued to pass. An ancient hour later, a figure entered the Third Medicine Valley, a man in blue clothes with an ordinary face and no eye-catching magic artifacts adorning him. It was the Annihilation God Emperor. As he stepped into the Third Medicine Valley, he looked around, as if in search of something. A disciple approached to greet him and inquired about his business. The Medicine Valley disciple was very polite and did not posture. The Annihilation God Emperor said, "I'm looking for Ji Xiaoyu." Ji Xiaoyu? The Medicine Valley disciple paused, thought for a while, and then remembered, saying, "Elder Ji has been in seclusion for many years and has not seen anyone. I have been here at Medicine Valley for many years without having seen her. It's fine, I'll just look around." Your Medicine Valley allows that, right? Of course, you're free to do as you wish. If you have any needs, feel free to ask me. Much appreciated. The Annihilation God Emperor responded, and the Medicine Valley disciple followed up with a bow before leaving. Afterwards, the Annihilation God Emperor continued forward. When he passed by the dojo, he turned his head to look, but after a mere glance, he withdrew his gaze and did not pause in his footsteps. 2 female disciples walked towards him, one of whom was Yu Yingying. I told you before that the heavenly-colored evergreen grass needs constant attention. You didn't listen. Do you know how many top-grade spirit stones are lost with one plant? Yu Yingying complained, while the woman beside her was almost crying, her lips quivering. As the Annihilation God Emperor was about to pass by Yu Yingying, he suddenly said, "For one facing imminent death, you've managed to live quite tenaciously." Upon hearing this, Yu Yingying stopped in her tracks, looking suspiciously at the Annihilation God Emperor. She knew that she was a reincarnation of a heavenly demon, and with Gu An's help over the years, her cultivation level had been continuously growing. Although not a genius, at least she was far from her lifespan's limit. Hearing the words of the Annihilation God Emperor, Yu Yingying instinctively panicked. "Are you talking to me?" Yu Yingying stared at the Annihilation God Emperor and asked. The Annihilation God Emperor did not stop, continuing on his way, leaving behind a perplexing comment for Yu Yingying. "Cherish the present, there will come a time when you are powerless to control your fate." A time when she is powerless to control her fate? Yu Yingying furrowed her brows, immediately feeling uneasy. The Annihilation God Emperor eventually reached Gu An's pavilion, where the Blood Prison Great Saint looked up at him, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Reincarnation Path Emperor. Aren't you going to show yourself?" The Annihilation God Emperor spoke, saying words that Xianxia, who was eavesdropping from afar, could not hear. After hearing what the Annihilation God Emperor had said to Yu Yingying, Xianxia became curious and puzzled about him. But unfortunately, the Annihilation God Emperor did not allow his eavesdropping to continue. "Reincarnation Path Emperor?" The Blood Prison Great Saint promptly stood up, watching the Annihilation God Emperor warily. The Annihilation God Emperor glanced at him and said, "Future Great Saint, sit down. Pretend you saw nothing, heard nothing. My future identity has been seen through by him? He is a real master. How extraordinary." Blood Prison Great Saint's heart raced with excitement, as he began to fantasize about his own future greatness. He was not afraid of the Annihilation God Emperor Kaos. Chapter 432. 10 million incarnations. While the Blood Prison Great Saint was still lost in his vivid fantasies, Ji Xiaoyu's room door opened. Dressed in black, Ji Xiaoyu stepped out of the house, her gaze settling on the Annihilation God Emperor, filled with doubt. The Annihilation God Emperor's gaze rested on Ji Xiaoyu, his expression remaining calm. At this moment, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared beside Ji Xiaoyu, vigilantly staring at the Annihilation God Emperor. "Who might you be?" the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor asked in a deep voice, his eyes betraying a strong sense of wariness. He, strong as a divine thought true immortal, couldn't see through the Annihilation God Emperor's cultivation level at all, which gave him the same feeling he got when facing Guan. The Annihilation God Emperor spoke up, "Reincarnation Path Emperor, You should remember me. He completely ignored the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, feeling like the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor wasn't worthy of conversation. Upon hearing this, Ji Xiaoyu's face changed dramatically, her expression one of disbelief, her body trembling as she struggled to compose herself. Seeing her like this made the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor even more nervous, while the Blood Prison Great Saint curiously looked at Ji Xiaoyu, seeing her in such a state for the first time. Taking a deep breath, Ji Xiaoyu raised her hand in salute and said, "The junior has seen the Divine Emperor. May I ask why the Divine Emperor has personally come to the great heaven and earth?" The Divine Emperor? The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared to realize something, his look towards the Annihilation God Emperor filled with reverence. He stepped back, half kneeling, bowing his proud head. The Blood Prison Great Saint was even more curious about the identity of the Annihilation God Emperor, his blood beginning to boil. The stronger the Annihilation God Emperor, the more likely his words would come true. He might yet become a great saint of the great heavenly spirit land. The Annihilation God Emperor said, "I am here to find someone, a remnant of the ancient evil demons." Ancient evil demons? Ji Xiaoyu asked in surprise. Descendant from the long family of the battle court. The answer from the Annihilation God Emperor made Ji Xiaoyu's pupils widen sharply. Ji Xiaoyu asked with a frown, "That clan still has descendants? Weren't they already extinct?" The Annihilation God Emperor stared at her and queried, "Do you really not know?" Ji Xiaoyu fell silent. The Annihilation God Emperor continued, "I am aware your master is from the Dragon Clan, but you must have seen their malice. Should a living person carry such hatred, the catastrophe he could cause is beyond what you or I could foresee. That would not be a catastrophe for one great heaven and earth, but a crisis for the entire universe." Ji Xiaoyu replied, "I really don't know, and currently I am undergoing the reincarnation tribulation. I have memories, but not the genuine feelings of my true self." The Annihilation God Emperor turned around, his gaze sweeping over the Third Medicine Valley. Ji Xiaoyu followed his gaze, her heart suddenly trembling as she realized his gaze had fallen on Guan. Guan lay beneath the mystic pure tree, his eyes covered by leaves, as if he were sleeping. The Annihilation God Emperor looked at Guan, pausing for a while before shifting his gaze elsewhere. Ji Xiaoyu didn't dare disturb him, waiting for him to speak. If she felt this way, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor was no different. After a long time, the Annihilation God Emperor turned his head towards Ji Xiaoyu and said, "Indeed, his aura and causality are nowhere in this land, but I will draw him out. Once you conclude this lifetime, you may come to assist me, and I will not leave you unrewarded." Having said this, the Annihilation God Emperor transformed into his true form, his black robe fluttering, his scale armor glinting with a chilly light, and the darkness beneath his helmet startled the Blood Prison Great Saint enough to widen his eyes. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor glanced over subconsciously, equally intimidated by the Annihilation God Emperor's appearance. The Annihilation God Emperor vanished into thin air. Far away, Xianxia, though unable to hear their conversation, saw the true figure of the Annihilation God Emperor and was startled, rising involuntarily. Not just him, some curious disciples also witnessed the transformation of the Annihilation God Emperor. However, the sudden disappearance of the Annihilation God Emperor gave them the illusion that they were seeing things. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stood up, took a step forward, and asked in a low voice, "Could it be that one from the legends of the Silent Destruction domain?" Ji Xiaoyu looked up towards the sky and softly said, "Yes, that's the one." The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared to be in a trance, and he couldn't help but ask, "Wasn't that just a legend? It actually exists. Your Majesty, what is your relationship with him?" Ji Xiaoyu replied, "I have once received the inheritance he left behind and communicated with his divine thoughts. He could be considered one of my mentors, and this was also the first time I truly saw him. The one just now must have been only an avatar." "Avatar?" The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor exclaimed. "Yes, an avatar. He has countless avatars, spread across different worlds, all searching for his own way." Ji Xiaoyu's gaze became distant, as if filled with longing. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor fell silent, equally shaken. The Blood Prison Great Saint, on the other hand, contemptuously thought to himself, "Why doesn't such a powerful being dare to take a walk in front of the master?" In his view, the Annihilation God Emperor was wary of Guan. Time continued to pass. As dusk approached, Guan sat up. He stretched lazily, having had a very comfortable sleep. He even had a dream, as if he had experienced lifespan samsara. But it was not as real as the memories left by lifespan samsara. This made Guan want to start another round of lifespan samsara. He stood up and walked towards the attic, spotting the white spirit rat on the way, which was looking at him with a plaintive gaze. Guan noticed that one of its legs was twitching, clearly injured. It had been at a disadvantage at Long Qing's place. Fortunately, the breakthrough deepened their path of returning primordial spirit, Guan said with a smile, a smug look on his face. Being cautious was always right. When he arrived at the front of his attic, Ji Xiaoyu walked out from inside. Let's go up to talk. Ji Xiaoyu came up to Guan and suggested in a low voice. After that, she went up the stairs first, with Guan following behind. Once upstairs and in the room, Ji Xiaoyu began to cast spells, setting up restrictions around the room to prevent others from spying, even utilizing the power of the primordial Taoist talisman. Is it that serious? Guan feigned surprise. Ji Xiaoyu fixed her gaze on Guan, her eyes complex. Guan touched his face and asked, "What's the matter? Have you awakened memories of your past life? Or rather, have you not gone through reincarnation tribulation at all? Who exactly are you?" Ji Xiaoyu asked softly. Guan laughed and inquired, "Who do you think I am?" Ji Xiaoyu looked at him and said, "You take in orphans and give them the Long surname. Could it be that your real surname is Long?" Suspecting him Long Qing? Guan couldn't help but smile wryly. Wrong guess. I'm actually the ancestor of the dragon clan. Guan shook his head and said, "How could that be? My surname is Gu." Giving Long Qing the Long surname is because he has it on his back. You've known that all along, haven't you? Ji Xiaoyu responded, "I have known for a long time, but I've also always had my suspicions. It's okay if you don't admit it, and it's best if you never do because there are beings out there to kill you that have come here. That being is from the ancient legends of the silent destruction domain, and may have existed even longer than the great heavenly spirit land. He is convinced that you are hiding in the great heavenly spirit land, and he will not rest until he finds you." Guan, resigned, said, "I'm truly not the person you think I am, but I am quite curious about this being you mentioned. Is he very strong?" The water above shimmered, and the whole dojo was quiet, a perfect atmosphere for reading, occasionally complemented by the sound of whale calls, which struck the soul. An hour later, Guan finished savoring the book in his hand, pressed it to his chest, and started to reflect. The spirit of chivalry is precious. Who says immortal cultivation is only about benefits and lacks chivalry? Guan talked to himself, his tone full of emotion. Having finished reading the swordman book, he wished to wander the mortal world, live the life of a chivalrous swordsman. However, he had to maintain his schedule of gathering medicinal herbs. If he had his clone do it or squeezed in the time, the experience wouldn't be the same. Forget about it. It's nice to think about. Wait, why not live a chivalrous life in the lifespan samsara? Guan opened his eyes, sprang up, and tucked the book into his chest. It was time to start a new journey. And this wouldn't be a waste of lifespan. Lifespan samsara could enhance his understanding of the Tao rules. His character for this reincarnation shouldn't be so stubborn. He must have a compassionate heart. So Guan thought, and with a thought, a series of prompts appeared before his eyes. You will spend 10 million years of lifespan to initiate a reincarnation evolution. Beginning to connect with the Tao rules. Searching for a reincarnation world. You have the following great heaven and earth choices, pick any one. First, the dark heaven and earth. Second, the Dahong realm. Third, Xianxia great heaven and earth. It's the dark heaven and earth again. Guan really wanted to try his luck with the Black Profound Emperor, but his intuition told him that if he chose Black Profound Emperor this time, the Black Profound Emperor would surely be even more terrifying. Forget it. There's no need to mess around. Since he had chosen a life of chivalry, he should choose a world of lesser strength. Guan thought that the Dahong realm should be weaker than the great heaven and earth. Let it be the Dahong realm. You choose to reincarnate in the Dahong realm. Given that the Tao rules of this world cannot conceal your talent, you will retain the ability to seize lifespan, but you cannot activate the phased functions. Reincarnation evolution begins. In the first year, you were born inside the purple micro-immortal mansion, and you were named Xianxia by your parents. At the age of 5, your father began to teach you the ways of immortal cultivation. That day, you demonstrated exceptional insight, stunning the purple micro-immortal mansion. At the age of 8, you mastered your family's swordsmanship to great success and comprehended sword intent. At the age of 12, when the purple micro-immortal mansion hosted a banquet for cultivators from various sects, you met an old man who said you had an extraordinary life grid and wanted to tell your fortune. Will you choose to agree? Wow! Why is there another person trying to tell fortunes? Guan could hardly bear to let the other party suffer a loss, so he chose no. You refuse to let the other party tell your fortune. The person feels somewhat disappointed and bids you farewell. At the age of 15, you condensed a golden core with sword intent within, becoming an unmatched prodigy the purple micro-immortal mansion hadn't encountered in 10,000 years. At the age of 17, you were sent by the purple micro-immortal mansion to the 10,000 sword immortal ridge. On the way, you encountered someone being attacked by a demon cultivator, whose wife and children had already been slain. You felt compassionate, but the elder accompanying you advised you not to interfere too much. Will you choose to intervene and save them? Here it comes. Time to kick off the immortal chivalrous life. Save them. Ignoring the elder's advice, you forcefully step in. The attackers are relentless and even start to besiege you. Out of desperation, you execute your swordsmanship, slaying the demon cultivator leader and accidentally seize 87 years of lifespan, marking a turning point in your destiny. Here it comes. Guan had been wondering why there had been no prompt about seizing lifespan. It turns out this kid had never taken a life. Only at the age of 17 did he discover the ability to seize lifespan, indicating he truly had a heart of great kindness. Guan also grew curious. Could it be that before starting the lifespan samsara, what he had in mind could determine the nature within the reincarnation? That's quite possible. In his previous reincarnation evolution, he had thought about surviving as much as possible, so his character in the reincarnation was more paranoid. At the age of 18, you arrive at the 10,000 sword immortal ridge, where you stand out among the thousands of trialists, and you obtain your first immortal sword in this life, Jianghu. At the age of 19, after contemplating the sword intent of 10,000 sword immortal ridge, you gain the appreciation of the ancestor of 10,000 sword immortal Dao, who wishes to take you as his disciple. Will you choose to agree? Definitely agree. What's there to hesitate about? Start getting stronger. Guan thought this and made his decision immediately. You choose to be apprenticed to the ancestor of 10,000 sword immortal Dao, you receive his instruction, and you begin to delve into the 10,000 sword immortal Dao. At 21, you finally step into the 10,000 sword immortal Dao. All of the swords in the 10,000 sword immortal ridge tremble for you. The ancestor is very satisfied with you and starts to personally train you in swordsmanship. Wait a minute. Chapter 434 Sword Dao Life. Although it was impossible to determine Xianxia's realm from the hints, he seemed very strong. Most importantly, he was only 21 years old. Guan contemplated as he read the information. He even felt that the Dahong realm was stronger than the usual great heaven and earth, casually decorated with the word immortal. At 25, your master, the founder of the 1,000 Swords Immortal, summoned you alone, the message read. When you went to see him, he claimed he wanted to pass on the position of head of the 1,000 Swords Immortal Peaks to you. If you accept the chief fortune of the 1,000 Swords Immortal Peaks, you will be able to command all the immortal swords, divine swords, and treasure swords there, and even gain longevity, but the price is the loss of your freedom. Do you choose to accept the position? Lose my freedom? No way. No. Guan immediately refused. In this life, he intended to experience the life of a chivalrous hero, not to pursue longevity. And what about the reincarnation Bodhi's original self if it obtained longevity? You refuse the position of head of the 1,000 Swords Immortal Peaks. The founder does not coerce you but assigns you an experience task to track down the eldest senior brother who has betrayed the sect. At 30, you arrive at Blood Deer City where the eldest senior brother was last seen. You meet Feng Meng, the city lord's daughter, and after a stream of fateful encounters, feelings blossom between you. Under her lead, you sneak into the underground city and come across a heritage, learning the killing sword technique. At 31, a mysterious cultivator attempts to sacrifice the entire city's population. You discover that he is the eldest senior brother you have been looking for. After a violent battle, He captures Feng Meng and threatens your life unless you destroy your sword intent. Do you choose to accept? Upon reading this, Guan mused that love was indeed a stumbling block for swordsmen. But as an aspiring swordman, how could he not save Feng Meng? If he listened to this eldest senior brother, he would be willingly surrendering. A dilemma. After a moment of struggle, Guan decided to trust Xianxia. If the eldest senior brother felt threatened by Xianxia, it indicated that he was wary of Xianxia, who must also have an ace up his sleeve. If he died just like that, then it meant the path of chivalry was not viable. He would just read books in the future and give no further thought to it. Guan silently chose to agree. You agree to destroy your sword intent. You dissipate the sword intent within you and sustain serious injuries. Your eldest senior brother laughs wildly, mocking your foolishness and threatening to execute Feng Meng. At the critical moment, your master, the founder of the Thousand Swords Immortal, acts. Using his finger as a sword from millions of miles away, he instantly kills your eldest senior brother. Enduring the pain, you catch Feng Meng as she falls from the sky. At 32, as you're contemplating the sword Dao in the courtyard, Feng Meng visits you. She confesses her true feelings, wishing to marry you and for you to inherit her father's legacy and walk the path of immortal cultivation again. Do you choose to accept her? No. Never marry. Without hesitation, Guan made the decision on behalf of Xianxia. If the original self has not married, what right do you have? You reject Feng Meng's heartfelt proposal, leaving her deeply hurt. That night, you secretly leave Blood Deer City and pursue your own sword Dao. The subsequent hints were all about traveling and performing chivalrous deeds. Xianxia did not return to the Thousand Swords Immortal Peaks, nor did he go back to the Purple Micro Immortal Mansion. Seeing Xianxia walk the path he wished to, Guan felt gratified. Xianxia was more obedient than the previous reincarnation bodies. At 40, based on your years of acting heroically, you earn a good reputation, but you still cannot recondense sword intent, nor can your Dao level grow. You find yourself in a quandary, uncertain whether to engage in a killing tribulation, executing those extremely vicious to seize their lifespan and thereby restore your sword Dao. Do you choose to undertake the killing tribulation? Kill extremely vicious people. What's there to hesitate about? Guan felt that taking lifespan did not conflict with being heroic. Being a hero didn't mean killing no one. What he had to do was to punish evil and promote good. You choose to undertake the killing tribulation, but another voice within cautions you, placing you in another dilemma. Voices urge you to take up the butcher's knife, warn you of the Demon King's initial intentions, and in the end, you choose not to engage in the killing tribulation, remaining true to your Taoist heart. In the esoteric process, you sense a wisp of sword intent close to you, yet invisible and intangible. It actually resists my choice? For the first time, Guan encountered such a situation. Fortunately, Xianxia had his own realizations, which made Guan even more hopeful. At 41, while saving someone, you are severely injured by a great cultivator. You flee into the river and drift down into an isolated island, where you find an abandoned bamboo tower to recover. At 43, having observed the mist in the forest for a long time and contemplating the natural world, you begin to create your own swordsmanship. At 45, you founded 1,000 forms of swordsmanship, reconvened your sword intent, and you welcomed the path enlightenment. At 48, your achievement in the sword Dao surpassed what came before. Every blade of grass and tree seemed alive with intent, as did the mountains and rivers, and you embarked on a path of the sword Dao that belonged only to you. At the age of 50, a youth stumbled upon your island, mistaking you for an immortal and wishing to take you as his master. As soon as he arrived, the bamboo swords you crafted quivered, and you sensed a sword intent from him, realizing he was the innate sword intent the sword immortal ancestor spoke of, a person naturally suited for sword practice. Did you choose to take him as a disciple? Innate sword intent? Is it that formidable? Without much thought, Guan chose to agree. Taking a disciple was not a bad thing. After all, he himself had taken disciples. Every choice brings both fortune and misfortune. As long as he did not resist in his heart, willingness was sufficient. You chose to take the youth as a disciple, hearing that he was raised by bandits and had no real name, thus you named him Yang Pingon. At 52, Yang Pingon had mastered all your sword techniques, but he could not yet perceive sword intent nor could he refine his own. Moving on, Yang Pingan's name appeared in every prompt. Yang Xian advanced his own understanding of the sword Dao while observing Yang Pingan's cultivation. Guan was astonished. The natural talent of Yang Pingan in the sword Dao was truly exceptional, even exceeding Yang Xian's by some measure. At 60, your sword Dao reached even greater heights. That year, Yang Pingan desired to leave the island to gain experience. Did you choose to allow him to leave? No. Having only practiced for a few years? With such little skill going out, is he seeking death? You disagreed with Yang Pingan's departure. Dissatisfied, Yang Pingan thus agreed to the rule you set. He could leave to gain experience only after he defeated you. He dedicated himself to intensive cultivation. Reading this prompt, a bad premonition suddenly arose in Guan's heart. Could it be that master and disciple will turn on each other later? As Guan pondered, he watched the incessant flow of prompts before him. It was still about cultivation, yet now included the challenges from Yang Pingan. Every 5 years, Yang Pingan would challenge Yang Xian, and according to the prompts, both master and disciple were growing rapidly. At 100, you once again ascended a step in your sword Dao, and your consciousness peered into the sword Dao river. You saw figures standing upon the river, and yearning for it. You drew closer only to encounter one of the figures swinging a sword at you, damaging your sword Dao. Your consciousness retreated back to your body, and you found your sword intent temporarily dispersed, with your internal spiritual power also depleted. At this moment, your disciple Yang Pingan came to challenge you. Did you choose to consent to his challenge? Such terrible timing. Guan wanted to refuse, but on second thought, refusing meant showing weakness. Yang Pingan likely harbored no intent to kill him. It would be a good test of Yang Xian's true strength. Without sword intent and spiritual power, could Yang Xian still defeat Yang Pingan? You agreed to Yang Pingan's challenge, and after a fierce battle, both of you were injured, with Yang Pingan winning by a narrow margin. He shouted out excitedly, venting out years of repressed frustration, and you could only let him travel the world. Before parting, Yang Pingan gave you 3 deep kowtows, saying he would never forget the kindness of your teachings. At 101, your wounds healed. You reconvened your sword intent and gained new insights. Seeing Yang Xian actually lose, Guan felt helplessly resigned, but thankfully Yang Pingan still had some conscience. The path of practice continued. Yang Xian gave up the ability to seize lifespan, yet his growth rate remained swift. He secluded himself in the deep mountains without wandering out, delving into the sword Dao, his cultivation advancing by leaps and bounds. Yang Pingan, however, did not return again. One prompt followed another. Quickly, time brought Yang Xian to the age of 500. At 507, you attained the accomplishment of perceiving everything in heaven and earth as a sword, and you buried all your swords at the bottom of a lake outside your island. At 508, a masked woman arrived at your island, claiming to be Feng Meng's daughter. Feng Meng was near death and wished to see you one last time. Did you choose to agree? Feng Meng? She actually had a daughter, but that was normal. Not all women can wait forever, especially since she was rejected by Yang Xian. With a sense of reminiscence in his heart, Guan then fell into hesitation. Chapter 435. Sword Saint, Great Hong Dao Sky. After much hesitation, Guan still chose to agree. After all, it was Yang Xian's life, and considering the affection between Yang Xian and Feng Meng, even in the absence of love and with old acquaintances departing, a farewell was appropriate. You chose to agree to meet Feng Meng. You packed up and left that same day. In the same year, you arrived in Blood Deer City and saw Feng Meng. She lay on her bed, her face devoid of any color, and you noticed an energy within her similar to sword intent but more complex and eerie. Upon investigation, you learned that Feng Meng had never married. The masked woman was a descendant of the Feng family. With her impending death, Feng Meng sought to test your feelings for her. Understanding the truth, you felt a mix of emotions. At the age of 509, no matter how much you helped, Feng Meng still succumbed to her illness. You stood before her grave in contemplation, standing for months as your hair turned from black to white. Suddenly, you felt a faint energy emanating from Feng Meng's grave, moving towards the distance. Believing this related to her death, you decided to investigate. Before leaving, You engraved wife of Xianxia on her tombstone. Seeing this, Guan suddenly felt ashamed. Had he originally agreed to marry Feng Meng, would the outcome have been different? The reminder for reincarnation continued. The mysterious energy moved slowly, and along the way, Xianxia avenged evil and promoted good. His reputation as a virtuous swordsman began to spread. He also gradually realized that the people of the world were suffering under the oppression of the dynasty while the immortal cultivation sects sat idly on their pedestals, not helping the people in misery but only extracting benefits from the secular world. Thus, Xianxia continued his charitable journey. Though his enemies grew more numerous, his mastery of the sword Dao was unmatched and unstoppable. Years later, following the mysterious force, he reached the outskirts of the imperial city, discovering bodies of commoners and cultivators piled up outside the city walls, discarded haphazardly into mountains of corpses, a horrifying sight. Seeing that the energy had entered the imperial palace, Xianxia faced another moment of decision. As the imperial city was closed for a ritual, forbidding entry, Guan chose to forcefully enter. This was not a moment in Xianxia's life to shrink back. The reminder continued. Forced entry into the imperial city put Xianxia in a difficult position, but wielding the heavens and the earth as his sword, he managed to enter the palace unharmed. He discovered the source of that energy, the national master of the dynasty, who devoured others' life energy with a miracle skill, including that of Feng Meng, whom he had met briefly. This life energy was then pumped into the emperor to prolong his longevity. Xianxia slew the national master, avenging countless victims, but discovered that the emperor was even more terrifying. A heart-stopping battle erupted. In the end, with no one to aid him, Xianxia killed the emperor, sustaining severe injuries himself. As he departed, the city's populace knelt to thank him. A young girl asked his name, and he did not hide it, choosing to bear the greatest hatred for this matter. Murderer of the emperor, Xianxia. The following year, Yang Pingon returned to a small island in the mountains to recover and continue his understanding of the sword Dao. But every few years, people would seek his help, and if their suffering was indeed irredeemable, he would intervene. Time reached Xianxia's 1000th year, and Guan still could not discern Xianxia's realm, as the prompts did not specify. However, between the lines, it appeared that Xianxia had reached the immortal path realm. Xianxia's opportunities were not many, far less than other reincarnation bodies, and he had never resorted to usurping others' lifespan. His understanding of the Tao came entirely from his own revelations of nature. Guan felt an even stronger sense of enlightenment from him. Of course, his greatest asset was still his talent for combat, as if born solely for warfare. At the age of 1234, a cultivator came to your mountain island, claiming to be a disciple of the sword god, delivering an invitation. Opening the letter, you discovered that the sword god turned out to be your disciple, Yang Pingon, who was about to become the sword master of the heavenly sword sanctuary, and was inviting you to a festival. Do you choose to go? What's the point in going? After so many years of not coming back to see him, now that he is flourishing, he wants to show off his power? Guan directly refused on behalf of Xianxia. After Xianxia refused, the cultivator had no choice but to leave. Afterward, another long period of cultivation years ensued. Although there were hardships, Xianxia always managed to handle them with ease. More and more place names and power names appeared in the hints, which also indicated that Xianxia's fame was constantly rising. During this period, there were also women who admired Xianxia, all of whom were refused by Guan. 5,000 years later, someone came to visit Xianxia, pronouncing his current title, Sword Saint. This title not only praised his strength but also celebrated his deeds and spirit. No matter how high his cultivation level, Xianxia preserved his original intentions. When those in suffering sought him out, he would help without asking for anything in return. He had slain a great demon that shocked the world, exposed the evil plans of a reputable sect, and even stopped the demon path from massacring the people of the dynasty. His deeds were widely known and had become legendary. At the age of 9,999, after meditating for 10 years, you finally attained enlightenment, transformed your golden core into a primordial elixir, and achieved the carefree Taoist skill. Wah! A carefree primordial immortal not even 1,000 years old? What kind of talent is this? Xianxia didn't possess vast immortal cultivation resources and didn't even have a great power often giving him guidance, yet he cultivated so quickly? After becoming a carefree primordial immortal, Xianxia could do even more. He even came into contact with the greatest evil of the Dahong realm. Dahong Dao Heaven. This was the strongest force in the Dahong realm, located above heaven and earth, like an immortal overseeing all living beings. They took mortal spirits as food, indiscriminately plundered the Dao level of cultivators, all while remaining excellently concealed. Even if someone knew, those with knowledge dared not speak out. Xianxia was approached by a cultivator, whose family had been slaughtered by the Dahong Dao Heaven for help. Thus, he learned of their heinous acts. Although Dahong Dao Heaven possessed a power surpassing the 9 heavens of the immortal path and he could not shake them, he still chose to help the seeker of revenge and executed the carefree primordial immortal of Dahong Dao Heaven. Decades later, the Dahong Dao Heaven sent people to recruit him. Knowing his character, Guan helped him decline the invitation from the Dahong Dao Heaven. After that, great cultivators occasionally attacked Xianxia. He repelled them one by one, until he finally faced suppression by a mysterious great power. Due to the vast difference in cultivation levels, Xianxia was struck into the mountains by a single hand of his opponent. At the critical moment, a sword light cut through heaven and earth and saved Xianxia. It was none other than his first mentor, the sword ancestor of 10,000 swords. The sword ancestor of 10,000 swords rescued Xianxia and took him out of the Dahong realm, to hide in a secluded minor heaven and earth. The sword ancestor of 10,000 swords warned Xianxia never to oppose the Dahong Dao Heaven again, as he could not protect Xianxia if he truly angered the Dahong Dao Heaven. Faced with the choice, Guan decided to endure in silence for the time being. Once Xianxia's injuries healed, the sword ancestor of 10,000 swords began to instruct him in cultivation, and after 10 years of personal teaching, the sword ancestor left. Xianxia resumed his cultivation and leveling up. He no longer sought to rescue individuals from suffering. He wanted to help all the living beings of the Dahong realm. This cultivation lasted tens of thousands of years. At the age of 70,000, Xianxia reached the free immortal realm of the 9 heavens of the immortal path. Chapter 436. Achieving Sword Dao Saint Ancestor, a free immortal of 70,000 years, achieved his realm through meditation and cultivation. Impressive indeed! Guan was even more excited about Xianxia's future, wondering if he could surpass the free immortal realm and overcome the death tribulation that awaited according to past experiences. After reaching the free immortal realm, Xianxia returned to the Dahong realm. Along his journey, he met several cultivators from the Dahong realm and learned about the situation there. For thousands of years, every millennium, the Dahong Dao Heaven would cleanse a region with blood. There were less than 100 regions in the Dahong realm, and now, its cultivators were wary of the Dahong Dao Heaven and started to establish their dojos in outer heaven. After parting ways with those cultivators, Xianxia returned to the Dahong realm alone. He first visited his birthplace, the Ziwei Immortal Mansion, only to find it annihilated by the Dahong Dao Heaven long ago. The once familiar land was desolate, with just a few broken walls remaining of the immortal mansion. Hatred for all living beings combined with personal vengeance. Even Guan was concerned for the Dahong Dao Heaven, questioning whether Xianxia would embark on a slaughter. Although the Dahong Dao Heaven had beings that transcended the 9 heavens of immortal path, Xianxia also had the ability to evolve his lifespan, yet he chose not to use it. The following year, Xianxia went to the site of the former Blood Deer City. He could no longer find Feng Meng's bones, and the city had vanished over time, leaving no trace behind, as though that memory was a figment of his imagination. Xianxia decided to draw his sword against the Dahong Dao Heaven. 2 years later, Xianxia descended upon the Hongtian realm of the Dahong Dao Heaven, intending to destroy its chi fortune and dissolve it. For this, he faced an ambush by the Dahong Dao Heaven. During the fierce battle, Xianxia continuously improved his sword Dao achievement, making Guan suspect that he had used his lifespan evolution ability. The free immortals of the Dahong Dao Heaven were alarmed. 10 free immortals besieged Xianxia, but he held his ground, wielding the world's essence as his sword, casting a brilliance that shook the ancient and modern world, even harnessing the power of the Sword Dao River. The Sword Dao River, like the River of Destiny and the River of Time, was a manifestation of the Dao. Mortal spirits could not fathom it. It represented the condensed power of the Sword Dao. Boosted by the Sword Dao River, Xianxia eliminated the physical bodies of the 10 free immortals in one strike, forcing their divine souls to flee in disarray. Just as Xianxia was about to destroy the foundation of the Dahong Dao heaven, an ancient being from it descended, a being who surpassed the free immortals, leaving Xianxia to fend off the attacks as best as he could. When Xianxia was nearly overwhelmed, the sword saint ancestor arrived to aid him and ultimately fell. Xianxia, in utter fury, awakened his sword heart to a divine level, making heaven and earth tremble. Guan, looking at the prompt before him, could already imagine how dire the situation had been. A battle of free immortals against a Taoist hidden immortal. Without the protection of the Sword Dao River, Xianxia, no matter how strong, would have met his demise. But this time was different from the past. Xianxia had an ally. After tens of thousands of years, his disciple Yang Pingon appeared to help. Remarkably, Yang Pingon had also become a free immortal. Together, teacher and student united in their sword Dao, critically wounded the old ancestor of the Dahong Dao heaven, and forced him to flee beyond the heavens. In the end, Xianxia and Yang Pingon together destroyed the foundation of the Dahong Dao heaven. The heavenly Dao sensed their action, and grand heavenly Dao merit fell upon them. Their cultivation levels skyrocketed, and they both condensed Tao fruits. Taoist hidden immortal. A Taoist hidden immortal of less than 100,000 years, and moreover, a teacher and student duo. Guan was deeply moved. If he had not taken Yang Pingon as his disciple back then, Xianxia would likely have died at the hands of the Dahong Dao heaven. The chief fortune of the Dahong Dao heaven dissipated. Its followers scattered and fled. The news spread far and wide. The names of the sword saint and sword god resonated across the world, becoming legends of the Dahong realm. Afterward, Xianxia chose to leave the Dahong realm. Yang Pingon declared his intention to create a new world order, pledging to protect all living beings personally. Xianxia gave him a deep, meaningful look, then set out to roam the cosmos beyond the heavens alone. Xianxia arrived at a fragmented world beyond the heavens to engage in path enlightenment. His battle with the Dahong Dao heaven had given him much insight. Guan saw multiple prompts of him comprehending the Karma Dao, Chi Fortune Dao, Fate Dao, and Creation Dao. At the age of 100,034, a mysterious figure invaded your dojo, claiming to be the Black Profound Emperor and challenging you to a combat. Do you choose to accept? Black Profound Emperor. Guan's spirits lifted at the sight of these three words. However, he was unsure whether Xianxia's time was in the past or future, thus unable to judge the Black Profound Emperor's cultivation level. For now, better refuse. I'll take care of him myself later. Such were Guan's thoughts. You choose to refuse the Black Profound Emperor's request for a combat. However, he unexpectedly made a move. You countered with a single sword strike, annihilating the Black Profound Emperor's physical body. His divine soul manifested in shock and fear, leaving behind a harsh threat before escaping with Shen Miao method beyond your pursuit, leaving you sinking into contemplation, watching the direction he fled. One. Victory with a single strike. Guan was filled with surprise and delight. Xianxia was more formidable than Lu Han, Xiaoxingtian, and Chu Lu. However, it was regrettable that the Black Profound Emperor had escaped. From this life, it was clear that the Black Profound Emperor had been relentlessly pursuing his reincarnation. Why was that so? What grievance did they have that warranted the Black Profound Emperor to persistently hunt down his reincarnation body? Guan couldn't figure out why, but he began to look forward to Xianxia encountering the Black Profound Emperor again. After surviving the attack of the Black Profound Emperor, surely Xianxia should be able to reach an even higher realm? After the Black Profound Emperor fled, Xianxia reflected on the path enlightenment for 1,000 years, and then he ventured deep into the cosmos, entering the silent destruction domain, and made the acquaintance of people whose mere titles were extraordinary. There were still female cultivators at the Tao fruit realm who wished to become his Taoist friend, and Guan still helped him refuse. At 300,000 years old, Xianxia achieved the status of Shen Yuan free immortal. He continued to uphold the chivalrous spirit of relieving suffering in the cosmos, spreading his name even further, and he gained a new title. Sword Dao Saint Ancestor. At 332, 71-34 years old, while you were teaching Sword Dao to the juniors of various dojos in the universe, the Black Profound Emperor suddenly attacked, wishing to annihilate your entire dojo. You used the stars as your sword, with the sword intent of billions of stars converging into a Sword Dao holy net that enveloped the Black Profound Emperor and fiercely vanquished him. However, you did not receive a prompt about seizing lifespan. Hence you concluded the Black Profound Emperor was still alive. This bastard was really hard to kill. Guan began to grind his teeth. The prompt continued. After 350,000 years, Xianxia wanted to see just how vast the universe was and continued his travels. In the end, he arrived at the boundary gate. Guan inwardly cursed his luck, but had no choice in the matter. At 350,008 years old, upon arriving at the boundary gate, as you were immersed in the profound Tao of the boundary gate, a figure stepped out from within the gate and attacked you, causing your physical body to perish. Your sword intent barely protected your divine soul, but the assailant struck again, annihilating your divine soul. You died at the hands of the heavenly spirit god. Reincarnation cycle has ended. Guan's face darkened. He knew it would be this way. Previously, the Black Profound Emperor was an insurmountable barrier he had finally overcome, and now the heavenly spirit god had become his new obstacle. How foolish, Xianxia. Why did you have to be curious? If you hadn't gone, wouldn't you have avoided death? Guan vanished into thin air from the chair and arrived in the midst of the cosmos, settling on a meteorite. He activated the lifespan barrier and then received Xianxia's life memories. Feeling Xianxia's life truly was even more poignant. During his life, he had never used lifespan evolution, and although he could not see Xianxia's prompts directly, Xianxia's sword Tao and cultivation level didn't skyrocket within a single ancient hour, except for the time he received the heavenly Tao merit. Moreover, throughout his life, Xianxia had slain fewer than 100 living beings. What a terrifying will! The death of Feng Meng grieved Xianxia deeply, and Guan felt the same sorrow. The obliteration of the purple micro-immortal mansion and the fall of the Wan Sword immortal ancestor also caused Guan distress but did not dampen his spirits. Guan focused on understanding Xianxia's two encounters with the Black Profound Emperor. The Black Profound Emperor was very mysterious, each appearance shrouded in black mist around his body, preventing any glimpse of his true face. From the battles, it was evident that the Black Profound Emperor was no match for Xianxia. But Xianxia was no match for the heavenly spirit god either. It's worth noting that, moments before his death, Xianxia left behind some items, sparking some expectation within Guan. He wondered if he would ever come into contact with those remnants. Chapter 437, Holy Heart Sword Tao. The change in Guan. After inheriting the memories of Xianxia, Guan had received Xianxia's sword Tao inheritance, which was the essence of his life's cultivation. Holy Heart Sword Tao. This sword Tao uses the heart as its foundation. Whatever the heart conceives can be transformed into one's own sword. Flowers, grass, trees and woods can become swords, mountains, rivers, seas can become swords, all living beings can become swords, the sun, the moon, and the stars can become swords. Xianxia even wanted to turn the 3,000 Great Tao into his swords, but his sword Tao had not yet truly reached the level of the Great Tao, so it was only a conceptual idea for now. By the time Guan had fully accepted Xianxia's memories, he opened his eyes, and a day had gone by. It seemed like only a day, but he had experienced a reincarnation. Those memories were so intense that they felt as if he had lived them firsthand. He was Xianxia, but he was not entirely Xianxia. To put it precisely, Xianxia was just a part of him, Guan, and this feeling was very mystical. Xianxia brought Guan not only the Holy Heart Sword Tao, but also a profound understanding of the many great Tao. Even Guan was amazed by Xianxia's perceptiveness. Without utilizing the evolution of lifespan, Xianxia's understanding of the great Tao was deep, stronger than other reincarnation bodies. Guan checked the lifespan consumed by the lifespan barrier, which wasn't too much, stood up, and in one step, returned to the hidden spirit palace. Deep-sea dragon carp was cultivating. Upon hearing footsteps, he opened his eyes, saw Guan return, and was pleasantly surprised, promptly rising to ask, "Master, why have you returned?" Guan looked at him and said, "Didn't you want some combat techniques? How about I pass on a set of swordsmanship to you?" "Of course, thank you, Master." Deep-sea dragon carp immediately thanked Guan and excitedly approached him, full of expectation. Guan didn't say much and began to impart the swordsmanship to him, guiding him to practice the Holy Heart Sword Tao from some simple techniques. Deep-sea dragon carp felt a change in Guan's aura, but he couldn't quite pinpoint what had changed, instead feeling an even greater respect for Guan. This was the influence of Xianxia's memories on Guan. Xianxia, often referred to as the Sword Tao Saint Ancestor, who regularly lectured, couldn't hide the refined dignity about him, and it had already begun to affect Guan. Integrating reincarnation memories inevitably affected Guan to some extent. An ancient hour later, Guan returned to the third medicine valley and, after stepping off the transmission array platform, was greeted by disciples. Do you feel any changes in our teacher? You all noticed too? Indeed, there is a change. Has the old man made another breakthrough? Our teacher's understanding of the Tao is beyond our imagination. Remember who's backing him. The disciples watched Guan's retreating figure, whispering among themselves. Some even deliberately flattered him, guessing he could overhear. When Guan arrived in front of the pavilion, Blood Prison Great Saint was also startled by the change in his aura. Had his master's cultivation level improved? He admired Guan, and the stronger Guan became, the happier he was, because he had decided to follow Guan for life. It doesn't necessarily have to be a millennium, be prepared. Guan stopped and said that to Blood Prison Great Saint. Upon hearing this, Blood Prison Great Saint was taken aback, his bovine fur fluttering as if blood flame was burning. Guan continued upstairs, returned to his room, sat at his desk, took out paper and ink, and began writing down the sword techniques and cultivation techniques from Xianxia's memories. He wasn't afraid of forgetting them. He just wanted to write them down to spread fortune in the future. He could even create a pavilion in the future dedicated to these secret books. Not for profit but to display. Cough cough. To show off. Half an ancient hour later, there was a knock on the door. Guan responded, and an Xian pushed the door open and entered. She closed the door behind her, then came to the desk, not saying anything, but simply observed Guan. Guan did not stop writing, and without lifting his head, he asked, "Is something the matter?" An Xian giggled. "I heard that Master's temperament has undergone some changes, and everyone is speculating that you've had a breakthrough, so I came to see for myself." "Indeed, you've changed, seeming even more like a great power than before." Guan smiled but did not respond. Suddenly, he thought of Xianxia's experiences and asked, "Do you ever harbor affection?" An Xian paused, puzzled. She asked, "Harbor what affection? There is no one in Medicine Valley who could stir mundane desires in me, and I will never fall into a calamity of emotions in my life. My senior brother once told me that his biggest regret was getting emotionally involved with someone, which hindered his progress, yet it would pain him to abandon it. I will never allow myself to fall into that situation." And Xianxia and the later generations of the An family were still harboring grievances against An Hao, making An Xian even less inclined to marry and have children. Moreover, she was cultivating immortality and would not be swayed by the instincts of flesh and blood. She was happy as she was and truly did not crave love. Guan looked up at her and seeing that she was not just giving lip service, he smiled. "Is that so? Affection is not as simple as you think. When fate arrives, you might forget your words today." An Xian tilted her chin defiantly. "I won't forget. Master, you aren't trying to send me away, are you? How could that be?" "I've just been reading a book these past 2 days and felt some emotions about the love story within," Guan explained while once again feeling that complex emotion well up within him. Yang Xian's biggest regret in life was rejecting Feng Meng. He had never had a woman because the memory of Feng Meng's feelings for him was satisfaction enough. Hearing this, an Xian breathed a sigh of relief and reminded him, "Master, you should read fewer miscellaneous and idle books." Guan couldn't help but glare at her. "Get out, get out, get out. You have no respect for your elders." An Xian grinned triumphantly, bowed, and then left. Guan continued writing the secret book as the sun outside the window gradually set. Time kept flowing by. 3 years later, all who knew Guan had grown accustomed to the changes in his temperament. Through integrating the Holy Heart Sword Tao, his sword intent had also improved, making swordsmanship once again his strongest technique. On this day, Guan stood on the cliffs at the edge of the third Medicine Valley, gazing up at the sky. He saw in the depths of the universe, near the silent destruction domain, a massive city appeared, pitch black in color, as big as the sun above the great heavenly spirit land. The Annihilation God Emperor was hiding within that black city. Holy Courts, Immortal Dynasties, Xianxia Divine Dynasty, and the Sky Demon Great Sect from the great heavenly spirit land had all sent people to investigate, but anyone who came close to Black City would turn to stone. Looking around, the void was suspended with hundreds of stone statues, the strongest among them reaching the Tao Void mysterious immortal realm, which was a pity. What exactly are you planning to use to attract Long Qing? Guan wondered to himself, noting that the Annihilation God Emperor was shrouded in a causal force stronger than even the free immortal. Indecipherable. Surely the true body of the Annihilation God Emperor. Just then, a figure descended from the sky and landed beside Guan. It was Wu Ju. In recent years, Wu Ju had just broken through to the Mahayana realm, making a name for himself in the Supreme Sect, and had drunk day and night with Guan. Guan looked at him and smiled, asking, "What brings you here?" Wu Ju, with excitement, said, "I have news about Jianghu. He has now attained nirvana and has arranged a time for a decisive battle at sea. The Supreme Sect plans to send a group of cultivators to the array platform to support him, and I will go too." And how? This was the most talented genius in the history of the Supreme Sect, still a legend to this day, constantly spoken of by many disciples. Guan pretended to be surprised, raising his eyebrows. He's advanced so quickly? Is his opponent formidable? The opponent is a loose immortal. He's challenging a loose immortal beyond his realm, so this has caused quite a stir overseas. Your disciple and Xian has a good relationship with him. Do you want me to pass on a message? Chapter 438. Dahong Sword Heaven. Wu Ju argued with Guan for a while before leaving in a hurry. Today the Supreme Sect had just received news, and because the journey was long, he had to leave immediately. The Hall of Elders of the Supreme Sect was also anticipating Jianghu's strength, so the arrangements were made urgently. In the following 3 days, the news of Jianghu challenging a loose immortal spread to the Third Medicine Valley, sparking discussions among the disciples. As Jianghu's junior sister, an Xian naturally received a lot of attention. Guan went downstairs and looked afar, seeing an Xian surrounded by dozens of female disciples chirping incessantly, their voices merging into a noisy chorus. He had just descended the stairs when Xiaoyu stepped out of the door. Guan initially thought she was looking for him, but she merely glanced at him before leaping up and swiftly flying out of the Third Medicine Valley. Guan subconsciously deduced Xiaoyu's fate, and knowing what she was about to do next, he felt relieved. He walked towards the dojo. This time, he was not interested in playing chess. Upon reaching the dojo, Guan did not step in but instead watched from the periphery as disciples and cultivators played chess. It was unusual not to see the Nine-Finger Divine Lord, and Guan felt somewhat unaccustomed. Long Qing approached from the entrance of the valley. Spotting Guan, his eyes lit up, and he hurried over. He came beside Guan and curiously asked, "Master, would you like to play chess? Shall I keep you company?" Guan glanced at him and said, "You, a lousy chess player, play with me? Didn't I ask you to cultivate your Taoist heart? Why are you fooling around with the white spirit rat again?" Hearing this, Long Qing scratched his head awkwardly and said, "It claimed it had found a treasure and wanted me to accompany it." Guan asked, "And then?" Long Qing clenched his fists in frustration and gritted his teeth. "It tricked me into a cave and then filled the entrance with dung. It infuriated me. I must settle the score later, master. It's really despicable." Upon hearing this, Guan silently stepped back. Long Qing continued to curse the white spirit rat. In the entire Third Medicine Valley, except for an Xian, everyone detested the white spirit rat. Though it was merely mischievous without truly harming anyone, and occasionally even gifted treasures to the disciples it had bullied, they could only endure its antics. Listening to Long Qing's complaints, Guan just listened without comment. Although the white spirit rat was nasty to others, it was very submissive to him, often trying to please him. How could he punish it? After Long Qing had finished venting, Guan suddenly asked, "I'm planning to establish a sword mountain. Where do you think it should be located?" Sword Mountain. Long Qing was stunned, his face showing surprise. "Wait. The master is Sword Venerable Fudao. Could this sword mountain, like the heavenly repair platform, contain his sword intent? It must be so." Long Qing immediately became excited, turning his head to select an appropriate location. The reason for creating Sword Mountain was to commemorate the ancestor of the 10,000 swords. The 10,000 sword peaks of the ancestor left a vivid memory. Hillsides covered in swords, each of exceptional grade and rank, each containing different sword intents. All the sword intents together were like the heaven and earth rules converging, forming a unique realm of their own, a realm of the sword Tao, And it was the 10,000 sword peaks that had inspired Xianxia to create the Holy Heart Sword Dao. Long Qing eagerly began to suggest ideas, and Guan had him follow to look around. Having the rare opportunity to roam the hills alone with Guan, Long Qing felt delighted, and the master and disciple walked toward the edges of the Medicine Valley. Seeing this scene, a smile appeared on Nzin's face surrounded by people. Long Qing was someone she had watched grow up, always considering him like her own child. Over the years, Long Qing often confided in her privately. He felt that his master could help him but insisted on tempering his Taoist heart. He suspected that his master did not like him. Naturally, an Xian hoped that there would be no rift between Guan and Long Qing. Seeing Guan willing to spend time alone with Long Qing, she thought Guan wanted to help Long Qing. An hour later, Guan and Long Qing reached the top of the mountain. Side by side, they looked out over the forests outside the Medicine Valley, a sight so magnificent it was breathtaking. "Do you still think I'm singling you out?" Guan suddenly asked, his gaze following up to the sky. The reincarnation vortex was fluctuating again. A massive amount of spiritual energy was emanating from it, clearly indicating that a force was arriving on the scene, likely with hostile intentions. Long Qing quickly waved his hands, saying, "How could that be? Master, why would you single me out? If not for you bringing me back to the Medicine Valley, I would probably have been devoured by demon beasts." He had indeed once thought that his master disliked him, but after Guan had made it clear last time that he carried significant karma and revealing it would invite catastrophe, he no longer indulged in wild thoughts. Now, he was more eager for Guan to teach him cultivation. Master is sword venerable Fu Dao. Even teaching him just a couple of moves is enough for him. Guan heard Long Qing's words and smiled with satisfaction. "If you truly think that way, I'm relieved. Rest assured, I do look forward to nurturing you, but not now. Do you know who the Bull Demon King is?" "The Bull Demon King? He has a background." Long Qing was astonished. To him, the Blood Prison Great Saint was the second most lowly existence in the Third Medicine Valley, only inferior to the White Spirit Rat. Such a guy has a background? Guan proceeded to tell the origin of the Blood Prison Great Saint, leaving Long Qing dumbstruck. The Blood Prison Great Saint is this formidable? And he's an ascender from the lower realm? The most crucial thing was that the Blood Prison Great Saint was actually a human, who only turned into a bull after devouring divine beast True Blood. Long Qing felt as if the sky had fallen. It was one thing for his master to hide his cultivation level, but even the Bull Demon King had an extraordinary background? He then thought of an Xian, Yu Yingying, and other acquaintances in the valley. Could they all have backgrounds or hidden strengths? The Blood Prison Great Saint has to be a bull for 1,000 years, and he has already endured most of that time, Guan said profoundly. Long Qing's expression kept changing. After pondering for a while, he took a deep breath and said, "Master, I understand now. I am indeed very lucky. I really should settle down. I've been too impatient. Your second master treats you well. When you have time, you can sit in meditation with him to calm your mind," Guan continued, his gaze shifting towards outer heaven. Along with a large number of figures flying out of the reincarnation vortex, both the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty could no longer sit idly by and began to join forces to block them. Over the years, they had been fighting the Xianyu Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon Great Sect. The Xianyu Divine Dynasty and the Sky Demon Great Sect had become increasingly strong, making it difficult for the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty to defeat them. This made the world situation more chaotic. Although the world is difficult, it is only the lowly beings who suffer. Yet for prodigies like Hao, it is actually a rare opportunity to rise. They could gain fame and fortune more easily. "Master, what are you looking at? Is there another movement in outer heaven?" Long Qing suddenly asked curiously. Although he had never left the Taitsong continent, he knew that outer heaven was much bigger and even had heavenly demons descending to the mortal world. With his master's ability, he must be able to see what's happening in outer heaven. Guan replied, "The reincarnation opened by Yuanshu ancestor is connected to many places similar to the great heavenly spirit land. Now, forces from other lands have arrived, and the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty are blocking them. A great battle is likely to erupt." Upon hearing this, Long Qing's eyes widened. There are many places like the great heavenly spirit land? Why do they have to come here? "Who knows?" Guan casually answered. His eyes showed a slight change. This mysterious force from the reincarnation vortex actually had a connection with him. More precisely, it was connected to Xianxia. Because he felt the sword intent of the Holy Heart Sword Tao in many people of this force, although it was nowhere close to Xianxia's, it indeed originated from the Holy Heart Sword Tao. Before Xianxia perished, he entrusted his sword intent to the Sword Tao River. The sword intent lived on, hence, anyone who practiced the Holy Heart Sword Tao would strengthen this sword intent, helping Xianxia's sword intent to become a great Tao. Sword Tao Eternal. This was the terrifying aspect of Xianxia. Even before he encountered the heavenly spirit god, he was considering his own death, so he left his sword intent in the Sword Tao River. His plan wasn't resurrection but to keep his sword Tao eternal, to prove he had lived. Guan couldn't help speculating if Xianxia had guessed that he was a reincarnation body. Although he had Xianxia's memories, he couldn't hear Xianxia's thoughts at every moment. Guan began to deduce this force. Dahong Sword Heaven. Only one word differed from the Dahong Dao Heaven that was annihilated by Xianxia and his disciples, but it was certain that Dahong Sword Heaven came from the Dahong realm. Master, have you been to other worlds? Is our world considered powerful in outer heaven? Long Qing kept asking. Just then, a vast sword intent suddenly burst forth from the horizon, shooting up to the sky, startling Long Qing to turn and look. He saw a sword light rising in the sky, as if wanting to split the heavens in two, rapidly stretching to the zenith. What is that? Long Qing asked in astonishment, feeling the sword intent, which made him want to submit. Guan did not respond, but he had already seen the master of the sword intent. From the immortal dynasty, it was a divine thought true immortal. Chapter 439 Zhu Luo Sword Monarch Sword Cultivators of the divine thought true immortal realm were formidable, their sword intent stirring the entire world, but to harbor illusions to obstruct Dahong Sword Heaven was undeniably a fool's dream. Gu An's gaze returned to Dahong Sword Heaven, where continuous figures flew out of the reincarnation vortex, each emitting a formidable sword intent, led by two free immortals. These people's faces were unfamiliar to Guan, never having been seen in Xianxia's memories. However, he was certain that Dahong Sword Heaven was founded by Xianxia's disciple, Yang Pingon. Previously, Dahong Sword Heaven had not appeared, but now it did. Could it be because its followers were being taught the Holy Heart Sword Tao? Guan felt this was only part of the reason. Their imposing manner suggested they harbored designs on the great heavenly spirit land. After a brief negotiation, the Holy Court and the Immortal Dynasty commenced their siege on Dahong Sword Heaven, the battle fierce. Long Qing could not view the fight from outer heaven, but he was lost in boundless imagination. The supreme sect, disturbed by the Immortal Dynasty's sword intent, debated where this sword intent originated. After watching for a while, Guan turned and left, with Long Qing quickly following, inquiring about the situation in outer heaven. Guan did not conceal the facts, briefly describing the battle in outer heaven. Long Qing listened excitedly, his longing for the immortal path realm intensifying. Upon returning to Medicine Valley, Long Qing hurried to his room to meditate, determined to make his master proud and to become a powerful figure who could stir the winds and clouds of the world. Guan returned to his room, untroubled by Dahong Sword Heaven bringing calamity, as this group was not potent enough to threaten the great heavenly spirit land. Sitting at his desk, Guan turned to look out the window, his thoughts drifting to distant memories. There on that island, only Yang Pingon accompanied him, always challenging him. Thinking of it, he felt quite nostalgic. Seeing the robust chi fortune of Dahong Sword Heaven, it was clear that a lengthy time had passed since Yang Pingon had established it. How strong was Yang Pingon now? Guan looked forward to finding out, though he also felt a sense of urgency. Times had changed, and it was essential to guard against others. Guessing Yang Pingon's intentions in seeking the Holy Heart Sword Tao was challenging. Setting aside Yang Pingon, he also had to consider the Annihilation God Emperor as a hypothetical enemy, striving to grow stronger. Moreover, the depths of the universe still had the heavenly spirit god as an obstacle. What a long and heavy responsibility. With these thoughts in mind, Guan took out the latest volume of the Supreme Secret Records and began to consolidate his Taoist heart. The Supreme Secret Records were still being written but were no longer sold in the market. Only Guan had access, as a form of repayment from Shenzhen. At dawn, the waves crashed against the shore. On the cliff, streams of sword chi appeared out of nowhere, circling and coiling to form a vortex that rapidly expanded, followed by a figure stepping out from it, landing on the cliff. Bathed in sunlight, this was a man in black armor and a white cloak. His long hair tied under a white jade crown, and a treasure sword hanging at his waist. His handsome face emanated a commanding arrogance. After landing, he looked around. The sword chi vortex behind him quickly contracted. After looking around, he smiled, then raised his right hand, sword chi emerging in his palm to condense into a silver mirror, the mirror reflecting a gentle woman. Sword Lord, the fate of the great heavenly spirit land is in chaos. It is for this reason that I could help you infiltrate it, but this also implies unpredictable dangers. You must be very careful, the woman in the mirror spoke, her face filled with worry. The man with the mirror hailed from Dahong Sword Heaven, revered as Ju Luo Sword Monarch. Hearing the woman's words, Ju Luo Sword Monarch responded dismissively. The great heavenly spirit land is not what it used to be. After that great battle, it's just a fragment of the great heavenly spirit land now. No one can threaten me, rest assured. The woman in the mirror frowned, then asked, Can you tell me now why you want to infiltrate the great heavenly spirit land? Ju Luo Sword Monarch looked into the distance and said, The Holy Heart Sword Dao has reappeared. Those above wish to find the reincarnation or inheritor of the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor to serve him, but I disagree. I will defeat him and prove that Dahong Sword Heaven does not need to pursue the Holy Heart Sword Dao. I will create an even stronger Sword Dao. Upon hearing this, the woman in the mirror's expression drastically changed. Just about to speak when Ju Luo Sword Monarch crushed the silver mirror, dissipating it into sword chi. He then identified a direction, stepped forward, transforming into a streak of sword light soaring toward the end of heaven and sea, leaving behind a trail of sword chi mirages, like a mirage hanging above the vast ocean. At the same time, North Sea Mountain, Guan, wearing a mask, sat on the eaves reading a book, his divine thought locked onto Ju Luo Sword Monarch. The ninth layer of the free immortal realm was intensely replete with the cause and effect of reincarnation. It was estimated that the reincarnation tribulation was about to end, only half a step away from the Tao fruit realm. When the other party descended onto the great heavenly spirit land, Guan had detected him immediately and also heard what he had said. He didn't consider Ju Luo Sword Monarch a threat. Rather, the implications behind the words of the Sword Monarch gave him pause. Did Dahong Sword Heaven intend to serve the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Dao? Guan remembered that although Xianxia had imparted the Holy Heart Sword Dao to Yang Pingon at the time showed no surprise but instead smiled, saying his own Sword Dao was not inferior to the Holy Heart Sword Dao. At that time, Xianxia's Holy Heart Sword Dao was merely rudimentary, nowhere near as strong as it was when contending with the heavenly spirit god, and countless years had passed since then, with the Holy Heart Sword Dao having reached unimaginable levels through the Sword Dao River. Could it be that Yang Pingon had faced setbacks in his Sword Dao and come to believe his own was inferior to the Holy Heart Sword Dao? Guan speculated about what might have transpired after Xianxia's death to make Dahong Sword Heaven so highly esteem the Holy Heart Sword Dao. As for Ju Luo Sword Monarch seeking to trouble him, he wasn't too concerned. What waves could a mere free immortal stir up? If he dared to act against him, Guan wouldn't hesitate due to past feelings. He would kill if necessary. He wasn't Xianxia. He didn't confine his actions within so many strictures. In the courtyard, Sage Xianmiao, holding a secret book, looked up at Guan and anxiously said, Mountain God, this secret book is too profound, I can't understand it at all. Back at Three Pure Ones Mountain, he had been considered a prodigy, able to grasp any Taoist sorcery with just a glance. Yet, when faced with the secret book bestowed by the mountain god, he couldn't comprehend it at all. Guan nonchalantly replied, If it were that easy to fathom, becoming an immortal wouldn't be so difficult. Centuries had passed, and Sage Xianmiao had already achieved the Mystic Heart Realm Cultivator status. His talent was not lacking, it was just that Guan hadn't prioritized nurturing him. Upon hearing this, Sage Xianmiao could only manage an awkward smile and continued to delve into the secret book in his hands. Boom! A deafening boom suddenly came from the sky, startling Sage Xianmiao to look up and see a huge ball of light appearing and rapidly expanding, with strong winds soon descending upon the mountains and forests. Sage Xianmiao quickly stood up, frowning deeply. With the mountain god still there, he was not panicked. Mountain god, a sword intent ascended to the heavens a few months ago, and now this bizarre phenomenon has occurred. What could be the reason? Sage Xianmiao asked, turning to Guan as the tempest tousled his long hair. Guan answered, Obviously, someone is fighting. Hearing this, Sage Xian Miao fell into silence. Though he was secluded from the world, people still passed by this place, allowing him to keep abreast of the major happenings overseas, which was currently in the midst of rare chaos. Chapter 440 The Origin of Sword Venerable Fudao. It seems I have won. And Hao's voice resonated between heaven and earth, silencing all the noise, allowing sects from all directions to feel his pride. A Nirvana victor over a loose immortal. Such a record was a marvel and shock throughout ancient and modern times. Looking at the peerless Hao, Wu Ju felt that he still shouldn't test him. If Hao learned that Guan was impersonating his master, Guan would probably be in big trouble. Such a domineering divine flame, the flame primordial treasure body is truly powerful. How do I feel that he is even stronger than the treasure body? Our vast energy Taoist sect also has geniuses with treasure bodies, but none as dominant as him. His divine skills just now were no small matter. He could actually mobilize the heaven and earth rules, which is also why he was able to defeat the loose immortal. No wonder the immortal dynasty could recruit him. Such talent truly surpasses the immortal spirit. Cultivators from all sects talked amongst themselves, but Hao did not pay attention. He raised his right hand, threw an elixir, and it plummeted into the rolling dust below. Immediately after, he turned and flew in a certain direction. Great cultivators, led by the supreme sect, immediately ordered a pursuit of Hao. Wu Ju, having no time to ponder, hurriedly caught up with the group. Half an hour later, in the mountains and fields, Hao and the high-ranking members of the supreme sect stood beside a stream, talking and laughing heartily, while Wu Ju stood not far away, envying the scene before him. Without Hao, he would be the one everyone looked up to, the future of the supreme sect, but with Hao present, he was no different from the other ordinary disciples. No one paid him any attention anymore. Vice-sect leader Ji Hantian looked at Hao and said with a smile, "We are most comforted by your achievement today. You carry the hope for the rise of the supreme sect. Even when you're away, the disciples in the sect will inquire about your whereabouts. You have become the hope that the juniors chase." Hearing this, Hao smiled even more, and faced with such words, he chose to be humble. He had quite a fondness for the supreme sect, as in the early stage of his immortal cultivation life, the supreme sect had given him considerable help. Most importantly, his master and junior sister were in the supreme sect, and just by that fact alone, it was impossible for him to leave the supreme sect. Just as they were exchanging pleasantries, an immense sword intent descended, making everyone feel as if their throats were being choked, cutting off all speech. Hao looked up, his eyebrows furrowed, a wariness apparent in his eyes. A whooshing sound descended from the sky. Clang! A sword fell from the sky, landing in front of Hao. Stones shattered and flew off, and the cultivators from the supreme sect retreated in shock, while Hao remained as steady as Mount Tai, unmoved. The sword that was planted in the ground trembled non-stop, the blade vibrating to form after-images. Before the cultivators of the supreme sect could speak, a figure descended from the sky, landing precisely on the hilt of the sword. It was Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Hao looked up at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch before him, his eyes filled with confusion, but no fear. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch ignored everyone else, his gaze fixed on Hao, burning with intensity as if he were looking at a rare treasure. "Who are you? What do you want?" The highest cultivation level elder of the supreme sect asked in a deep voice, clutching the Dharma treasure in his hand, clearly very nervous. Just one glance at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was enough for everyone present to realize that they were no match for him. "Boy, what's your name?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch stared at Hao and coldly asked, the breeze blowing his robe as he stood on the hilt, emanating an overwhelming pressure. Hao responded, "Hao, do you have a matter to attend to, Taoist friend?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's mouth curved upwards. "I am Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Your life grid is quite decent. No matter which part of the great heaven and earth you are in, you will rise. Serve me, and I can help you grow faster and raise your limits." Upon hearing this, Hao wasn't surprised. On his journey, too many people had already said such things to him. Hao remained composed. "Thank you for your kindness, Taoist friend. I have a master, a sect, and a power I serve. I cannot pledge allegiance to you." Zhu Luo Sword Monarch narrowed his eyes. Do you know how high my cultivation level is? And Hao shook his head slightly while the others were extremely nervous, sensing that the situation was far from over. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch raised his right hand, and sword qi surged from his palm. Even though it was just a thread, the implied sword intent left everyone feeling cold. I am a free immortal, which is what you call the 9th level of the immortal path. The strongest of your great heaven and earth, the Xianxia, is also a free immortal, just stepping into the reincarnation tribulation. While I have reached the end of the reincarnation tribulation, just one step away from breaking through to a higher realm. At that time, with just a thought, I could obliterate the entire great heavenly spirit land. While declaring this, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch wore a defiant smile. He seemed eager to see Hao's reaction upon knowing his power. And Hao's expression indeed changed unnaturally. He knew of the free immortal, that was the realm of the Yongxian Emperor, but from Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's words, the Yongxian Emperor had only entered the threshold of the free immortal realm, whereas Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had reached the pinnacle of the free immortal realm. The cultivators from Supreme Sect were all showing expressions of disbelief. How could they have come across a being more powerful than Xianxia? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's arrogance was overflowing, making people feel that he wasn't spouting empty words. What about it? Will you take back what you said just now? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch stared at Hao with a mocking smile. And Hao replied, Senior is indeed formidable, but if I were to serve you just because you are stronger, and then tomorrow I meet someone stronger than you, wouldn't I have to betray you too? Addressing the other as senior was already the limit of respect Hao was willing to give. He was indeed shocked by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's cultivation level, but did not believe that Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was the strongest in the world. The strongest person could only be his teacher. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, upon hearing Hao's refusal, showed a displeased look, but he also felt that what Hao said was reasonable, and his appreciation for Hao grew stronger. Who is your teacher? If I ask him to give you to me, will you no longer refuse? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch asked. At these words, the expressions of the cultivators from Supreme Sect became strange. Although they were shocked by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's power, they also believed in their hearts that Sword Venerable Fudao was the strongest. Otherwise, how could the immortal dynasty lay aside their hatred, and why would the Holy Court come forward with flattery to win over Sword Venerable Fudao? And Hao frowned. He did not believe that Zhu Luo Sword Monarch could threaten his teacher, but he feared causing trouble for his master. If you don't tell me, I can calculate it myself. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch huffed and then started to calculate by using his fingers. He can calculate it? And Hao's expression clearly changed, and the cultivators of Supreme Sect were also frightened by such means. Wu Ju had been silent, but hearing this, he suddenly grew worried for Guan. If that kid impersonates Sword Venerable Fudao, could he be found out by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and bring trouble upon himself? Thinking this, Wu Ju grew anxious. All was silent in the great heaven and earth. Everyone was watching Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's calculation. However, after more than a dozen breaths of time had passed, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's brows furrowed. Strange. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was surprised in his heart but did not dare to show weakness. He could not calculate Hao's teacher. He did manage to calculate LV Batian and Hao's teachers from the Star Sea congregations and Immortal Dynasty, but these people's cultivation levels were too low, and the karmic ties of teacher and student with Hao were not strong, indicating that Hao didn't acknowledge them in his heart. He could feel there was a mysterious existence behind Hao, but no matter what, he could not figure it out. What's going on? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was filled with vigilance. Was there still an existence in the great heavenly spirit land that he couldn't calculate? Even for Xianxia, who had entered the reincarnation tribulation, he could still calculate some traces left by Xianxia before his death. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's gaze flickered, looking at Hao with a somewhat odd look. Could it be that Hao's teacher was the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Dao, or a reincarnation of the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor? The more Zhu Luo Sword Monarch thought about it, the more possible he felt it was. He had come to the great heavenly spirit land for some time now, but could not find anyone or anything related to the Holy Heart Sword Dao. He even doubted whether the Holy Heart Sword Dao had appeared in the great heavenly spirit land at all. With thoughts as swift as lightning, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch put on a smile and said, And how about you take me to see your teacher? We can put aside your matters. I won't insist on them any longer. And Hao asked in confusion, Why do you want to see my teacher? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch smiled and said, To be honest, I come from another world, and I am here to find your teacher. Your teacher is the existence our Taoist tradition has been searching for. As long as we find him, we will acknowledge him as our leader. Another world. Everyone was shocked. So Sword Venerable Fu Dao had such an origin? Upon further thought, they realized Sword Venerable Fu Dao's mysteriousness and unfathomable strength seemed to indicate that he could only come from another world. Any other origin would seem illogical. After hearing this, and Hao furrowed his brows tighter, falling into hesitation. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's face turned solemn, while his heart stirred with excitement. Holy Heart Sword Dao. Finally, I have found you. Do not let me down. My sword Dao will certainly be stronger than yours. Chapter 441 10,000 Sword Mountain. In front of a mountain on the north side of the Third Medicine Valley, Guan stood shoulder to shoulder with an Xian, as they watched the disciples embed treasure swords into the mountain. This mountain bore no flora at all. It was barren with rocks of a red hue. The mountain was not naturally formed but was constructed from special stone materials Guan had acquired. Materials often used to build array platforms and magic artifacts. An Xian turned her head to look at Guan and asked with curiosity, Master, are you creating this sword mountain to leave a legacy? Guan smiled and said, You will find out later. Seeing him speak so mysteriously, an Xian grew even more curious about the sword mountain before them. Guan raised his hand, and a steel flew out, landing in front of Sword Mountain and embedding itself into the soil. He followed by waving his hand in the air, using his finger as a brush to carve characters onto the steel. An Xian focused her gaze and could feel a force from Guan's strokes, a force she could not describe with words. For some reason, she felt a sense of loneliness. 10,000 Sword Mountain. Guan avoided inscribing the full 10,000 Sword Mountain ridge, for fear of directly impacting fate. Omitting one character seemed excessive, but it actually made a world of difference. There were many 10,000 Sword Mountain ridges, and 10,000 Sword Mountains across different lands. As soon as the 3 characters for 10,000 Sword Mountain were carved, an Xian suddenly felt that this Sword Mountain possessed a spirit. Although many disciples were still embedding swords into the mountain, it somehow felt exceptionally distinct to her. Once they are done, disciples are not to set foot here in the future. With that, Guan turned and walked away. An Xian remained standing there, continuing to admire 10,000 Sword Mountain, always sensing that the mountain hid mysteries. In the following days, 10,000 Sword Mountain became a frequent topic among the valley's disciples and visiting cultivators. The very name 10,000 Sword Mountain carried immense force, and since Valley Master Guan was associated with Sword Venerable Fu Dao, they couldn't help but pay close attention. The news also spread to the Supreme Sect. Since Guan had claimed he was Sword Venerable Fu Dao, his fame had skyrocketed, and the major families had even investigated him. Pan An's true identity could no longer be concealed. Since Panan was him, it led the major families to encourage their disciples to study Investiture of the Gods, Journey to the West, and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. They felt Sword Venerable Fu Dao must have wanted to convey something through Pan An. Even if they overthought it, being familiar with Pan An's books would give them something to talk about when facing Sword Venerable Fu Dao in the future. It could do no harm. One day at noon, outside the Supreme Sect, and Hao, accompanied by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, emerged from the forest. He turned his head to Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and said, I only know my master is in the Supreme Sect, but I don't know exactly who he is. If he wants to meet you, he will seek you out. Remember, do not harm the disciples within the sect. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch snorted, as the Sword Lord of Dahong Sword Heaven, would I harm mortal spirits? He transformed into a streak of sword light and soared towards the Supreme Sect. And Hao followed to catch up but had already lost track of Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's presence. Thus, and Hao decided to first visit an Xian at the Third Medicine Valley. Half a column of incense later, and Hao landed on a mountain peak, from where he could oversee the entire Third Medicine Valley. Compared to many years ago, the Third Medicine Valley had become more prosperous and impressive. Each surrounding mountain was equipped with formations, and he could see the figures of valley disciples laboring and practicing. Things truly change, but people pass away. And Hao murmured to himself, his tone filled with lamentation. He suddenly felt anxious, fearing that an Xian was no longer there. He was about to jump down when a noise from beside him caught his attention. Glancing over, he saw a man and a mouse running toward him. He remembered that mouse. It was Guan's white spirit rat. The supreme sect had many, but he had never seen any as plump as Guan's, which is why he remembered it. Behind the white spirit rat came a strapping young man. Upon seeing the newcomer, Anhao couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This fellow looked a bit like Guan, which made him slightly bewildered. Most importantly, this youth had not a trace of spiritual power, but his physical prowess was astonishingly strong. Anhao even felt that the youth possessed the physical prowess of the Nirvana realm. Anhao became interested in Long Qing. He didn't mind the white spirit rat running past him, his gaze fixed on Long Qing. Suddenly, the white spirit rat stopped, turned its head to look at Anhao, its eyes filled with suspicion. It felt as if it had seen this person somewhere before. Notice taken of Anhao's gaze, Long Qing involuntarily slowed his steps. In the presence of others, he needed to maintain dignity and couldn't disgrace the Third Medicine Valley. When he reached Anhao, Long Qing bowed with a clasped fist and said with a smile, "I am Long Qing, a disciple of the Third Medicine Valley. May I know your respected name? And are you seeking entry into the Third Medicine Valley?" Nowadays, the Third Medicine Valley held a high reputation within the Supreme Sect, and even as a servant disciple, one could face anyone confidently. Anhao sized up Long Qing and asked, "What is your relationship with Guan?" Hearing the direct mention of his master's name and recognizing the extraordinary demeanor, Long Qing guessed that Anhao's relationship with his master was not shallow, so he replied, "He is my master." "Are you looking for him?" "He just left today and should be back by evening." "Shall I lead you into the valley?" "Master? Why do I feel like you're his descendant?" Anhao chuckled. Upon hearing this, Long Qing wasn't angry, since many people had said the same, and he had doubted it himself. However, Guan had refuted any blood relation between them, and ultimately, Long Qing attributed it to being heavily influenced by his master in manner and temperament over time. Long Qing shook his head and said, "I am not, though I wish it were so." Anhao did not press further, nor did he mind the trace of melancholy in his tone. Anhao smiled and said, "Throw a punch at me. If you manage to hurt me, I will pass you divine skills that require no spiritual power to wield." "Is that really a good idea?" Long Qing frowned. "Divine skills? Do you take me for just another master?" He had already learned divine skills from Xianxia, but in his opinion, they weren't all that impressive. Anhao raised a hand, his face challenging as he taunted, "Aren't you afraid? With such a strong physique but too scared to strike. Aren't you failing to appreciate the gift given to you by the heavens?" At these words, Long Qing's temper flared. He lifted his right hand, slowly clenched it into a fist, a visible force enveloping his fist, his robe billowing and hair dancing as his aura abruptly transformed. His expression turned stern, making Anhao feel he resembled Guan even more. Long Qing said coldly, "If I end up crippling you, you'd better not regret it." Anhao proudly laughed. "Thinking of crippling me? Even if you trained for another 100,000 years, you couldn't." A cold glint flashed in Long Qing's eyes as he suddenly stepped forward, his right fist held back while his body poised as though drawing a bow, unleashing the punch from his waist with all his bodily strength channeled into his fist. He could sense Anhao's strength. Not wanting to lose face, he naturally gave it his all. His punch sounded out like a rumble of thunder, startling the Medicine Valley disciples in the distance. Whether on the mountain or in the valley, they turned their heads towards the source of the noise. Also beneath the mystic pure tree, an Xian was practicing when she opened her eyes and looked towards the sound, her brows tightly furrowed. Chapter 442. The so-called fellow disciples on the mountaintop. The strong wind spilled over, causing flowers and grass to sway like green waves. Long Qing maintained his punching stance, his face showing disbelief. How could this be? His eyes widened, a tempest of shock surged within him. Following his gaze, he saw his right fist being blocked by a single finger from Anhao. His fist, being resisted by Anhao's index finger, gave him the sensation of pushing against a mountain. No, mountains aren't this hard. Anhao's hair fluttered in the wind as he stared at Long Qing, his lips curling into a smile. Not a bad reaction, but it seems you haven't fully mastered your power, or rather, you don't really know the kind of power you possess at the moment. With a gentle push of his right index finger, Long Qing felt a force overwhelming like a mountain collapsing over him, throwing him backwards. His complexion drastically changed, and while he instinctively stabilized his body, he still staggered backwards several steps before stopping. He looked at Hao with fear in his eyes, swallowing hard before asking, "Who exactly are you?" "My name is Hao. Have you heard of me?" Hao asked with a smile, his dominance and pride momentarily receding, now his smile seeming warm as a spring breeze. "Hao?" Long Qing's eyes widened excitedly asking, "Are you elder sister and Zin's senior brother?" Hearing this name, Hao's expression turned gentler as he asked, "Is your teacher sister doing well?" He hadn't used his divine sense to probe the third medicine valley, partly for fear of being rude and partly because he was somewhat nervous inside. Of course, she is the leading disciple of the third medicine valley, how could she not be doing well? Long Qing, knowing Hao's identity, suddenly felt a sense of closeness. Although Xian was his teacher sister, she was like a mother to him in his heart, since he had been raised by Xian and Yu Yingying since he was young. He often heard Xian mention Hao, naturally forming a close and curious impression of him. Hearing this, Hao completely relaxed and then asked Long Qing to take him to see Xian. Long Qing was very curious about him. As the two walked towards the valley, they chatted, mostly with Long Qing asking and Hao answering. Hao quite liked Long Qing. He couldn't quite say why, perhaps it was Long Qing's strong physique that sparked anticipation. "Why does your medicine valley have so many great cultivators?" Hao suddenly asked. He even sensed the presence of those from the immortal path realm, which piqued his curiosity. Long Qing mysteriously said, "Haven't you heard? My master is Sword Venerable Fudao." Hearing this, Hao was taken aback, asking in surprise, "You have two masters?" "No, it's my master Guan. He is Sword Venerable Fudao." Long Qing hurriedly explained, knowing what he should say and what he shouldn't. Anything publicly said by Guan, he could repeat. "Guan is Sword Venerable Fudao? How is that possible?" Hao frowned. He couldn't forget his first encounter with Guan. Both were very young back then. How could Guan possibly be his master? His first reaction was that there must be some misunderstanding, given that no one in the Supreme Sect would dare impersonate Sword Venerable Fudao. My master admitted it himself, and Sword Venerable Fudao hasn't challenged him, so isn't he Sword Venerable Fudao? Long Qing explained. He was unaware of the relationship between Hao and Sword Venerable Fudao. Too much time had passed, and only a few knew of their relationship. Long Qing, having spent years in the Third Medicine Valley and Xian deliberately not mentioning it, those great cultivators had no interest in gossip, so he was also none the wiser. Admitted it himself? Hao's brows furrowed tighter, feeling quite uneasy. What did Guan mean by this? Trying to take advantage of him? Hao decided he needed to have a good talk with Guan, as some matters must not be carelessly touched. Half a stick of incense later, Xian led Hao into the house, shut the door, and asked him to have a seat. Then she began to brew tea. "Elder brother, I thought you had forgotten about me," Xian said jokingly as she walked to the table with the teapot. Hao, who was looking around the room, replied awkwardly, "How could I forget you? Whenever I have time, I come back to see you." Xian laughed heartily, "You can even forget your own wife and children. Forgetting me wouldn't be strange." Guan became more embarrassed. He coughed lightly and said, "My aspiration is to travel the world. I cannot stay with them. If I maintain relations, it would only bring them trouble." Xian did not speak of the family's encounters, reasoning that if Guan cared, he would visit on his own, and if he did not, speaking of it held no meaning. Moreover, as long as Guan remained, the family had already received his care, and they would no longer face significant troubles. Thinking of this, Xian suddenly felt that although Guan was strong, there was still much he could learn about being a person from his master. Just like romantic attachments, the master would not decide lightly, but he would take care of those who had good relations with him. Guan didn't know what she was thinking. After expressing concern for a few moments, he asked the question he most wanted to ask. "I heard that Guan calls himself Sword Venerable Fudao? What's that about? How dare he?" Xian heard this, widened her beautiful eyes and huffed. "What? He's not worthy? It's not that. Sword Venerable Fudao is our master. Guan grew anxious, a side of him that only showed in front of an Xian. An Xian followed saying, "He is my master too, I have two masters." "It's not the same." Guan frowned, unsure how to explain. An Xian said, "Perhaps Sword Venerable Fudao truly is him, and our original master isn't him. Has the master, as Sword Venerable Fudao, ever met you? Could it be he also received guidance from our first master? Or maybe they have a common master, that's why they both can perform the Demon Shadow Divine skill." Having been with Guan for a long time, she too had become crafty, thinking of continuing to confound Guan. "So fun." Guan hesitated and said, "You mean we might actually be fellow disciples?" "Who knows, he calls himself Sword Venerable Fudao and hasn't run into trouble," an Xian shrugged. More than that, she was curious about how strong Guan was. She felt a competitive spirit rising within her now. Guan, after hearing this, pondered thoughtfully. Thinking that Guan might truly be Sword Venerable Fudao, and his master hadn't clarified this matter, he felt uneasy. No way, he had to find Guan personally. If the master wasn't Sword Venerable Fudao, why wouldn't he explain? Could it be he was helping Sword Venerable Fudao pose? Could this mean that in the master's eyes, Guan was more important? Guan's thoughts were in turmoil. He hadn't felt so perturbed for a long time. Previously, no matter how tough the situation, he had never felt such anxiety because his master was his ultimate pursuit, and he was so determined to become stronger because he didn't want to disappoint his master. An Xian changed the subject, starting to ask about Guan's experiences over the years, and Guan didn't hide anything, beginning from the time he left the Star Sea congregations. Guan too wanted to impress his junior sister by sharing his legendary experiences, speaking emotionally, but unfortunately, an Xian hadn't yet learned Guan's emotional intelligence to provide timely emotional feedback to him. Time flew by quickly. As evening approached, Guan rode the Blood Prison Great Saint back to the valley leisurely. Although Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had arrived, he didn't pay much attention to it, going about his usual activities. Having spent the afternoon investigating, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had already set his sights on Sword Venerable Fudao. He would soon arrive at the Third Medicine Valley. Guan could sense a strong intent to battle hidden within Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's sword intent, an indication that Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was harboring ill intentions. He was curious to see how strong this prodigy descendant of Dahong Sword Heaven was. Upon entering the valley, Guan dismounted and walked alone towards 10,000 Sword Mountain. Simultaneously, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch appeared out of nowhere in front of the stele at 10,000 Sword Mountain, gazing at the mountain, lost in thought. This mountain harbored a faint sword intent that was difficult to capture. Although he felt no threat, he couldn't see through this sword intent. It didn't resemble the Holy Heart Sword Dao. He had been to the Sword Dao River and knew what the Holy Heart Sword Dao was like. Some disciples passing by on the trail behind him cast surprised glances his way, but seeing he didn't step onto 10,000 Sword Mountain, they didn't come forward to stop him. From a distance, Guan spotted Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and conducted a lifespan detection on him. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, Free Immortal Realm 9 Layers 29, 769, 870/500, 000, 000/500, 000, 000. Could killing him yield 40 million years of lifespan? Guan thought to himself, his steps neither fast nor slow, leisurely as if wandering through a garden, occasionally greeting disciples he encountered along the way. Chapter 443. You dare challenge Holy Heart Sword Dao? Daoist friend, you seem unfamiliar. Is there something you need help with? Guan's voice came from behind, interrupting Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's thoughts. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch half-turned, glancing at Guan with the corner of his eye. Looking at Guan, he felt a strange sensation in his heart. Logically, such a mortal shouldn't merit his attention, but somehow as soon as Guan spoke, he had turned around involuntarily, drawn to him. He had only ever felt this way in the presence of those stronger than himself. While sizing up Guan, he deduced that Guan had some karma with and how, though not closely connected, it indeed existed. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch asked, "Are you the valley master of this medicine valley?" Guan smiled and replied, "I am Guan. May I know your esteemed name?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch answered, I am Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, from Dahong Sword Heaven. Dahong Sword Heaven? I have not heard of it, but it sounds grand and powerful. Certainly the force of a holy land, and it must be far from the Taitsong continent, Guan feigned surprise. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was not in the mood for probes, and directly asked, "Are you a disciple of Sword Venerable Fu Dao? Call out your master." As he spoke, he also emitted a trace of sword intent, instantly enveloping the entire Third Medicine Valley. Ji Xiaoyu appeared out of nowhere in front of Guan, staring warily at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, the Dao patterns on her forehead igniting into fierce flames. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor appeared as well, frowning at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. And Hao, Nine-Finger Divine Lord, and Shen Xinzi also quickly appeared. Those great cultivators, who had been playing chess in the dojo, promptly arrived as well. Guan could feel that Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's sword intent was to isolate the Third Medicine Valley from the outside world. Was he intending to create a battlefield? And Hao stared at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, asking in a deep voice, "Senior, what are you trying to do?" An Xian swiftly ran over, curiously looking at Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, her eyes filled only with anticipation. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch ignored Hao, his gaze settling on Ji Xiaoyu. He squinted and said, "Yin Yang Four Emperors, long time no see, Reincarnation Path Emperor, I didn't expect you to undergo reincarnation tribulation here." Ji Xiaoyu with a composed expression replied, "Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, it seems Dahong Sword Heaven has no intentions of invading the great heavenly spirit land. Are you acting alone?" Zhu Luo Sword Monarch laughed. "Among the Yin Yang Four Emperors, I only fear the Sixth Tao Dust Emperor. Has his reincarnation tribulation ended?" Yin Yang Four Emperors. Reincarnation Path Emperor. Sixth Tao Dust Emperor. The surrounding cultivators listened in astonishment. These names sounded impressive. "You can go find him. He indeed mentioned you," Ji Xiaoyu coldly replied. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch shook his head with a rueful laugh, ignoring the stares of others. He said, "Enough of this, I'm here to find Sword Venerable Fu Dao and challenge him to a battle." Hearing the name Sword Venerable Fu Dao made everyone tense. Daring to challenge Sword Venerable Fu Dao, he must be extraordinary. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor couldn't help but ask, did Dahong Sword Heaven come for Sword Venerable Fu Dao? He had also witnessed the great battle outside of heaven before. Dahong Sword Heavens might have alarmed him. They managed to fight simultaneously against the Immortal Dynasty and the Holy Court, and Zhu Luo Sword Monarch hadn't even participated in that battle. Just how many free immortals did Dahong Sword Heaven possess? Zhu Luo Sword Monarch did not answer the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. Despite being only a single great realm apart, he simply looked down on the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. The scene suddenly quieted down, turning the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's face an iron blue. Guan gave a cough and said, "So, it seems you want to challenge me?" At these words, everyone turned to look at him. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's expression changed. He stared intently at Guan and asked, "Are you Sword Venerable Fu Dao?" So that was it. No wonder he had such an unusual reaction. In his eyes, no matter how one looked at it, Guan seemed like a cultivator in the nascent soul realm with no trace of the immortal path realm. And Hao heard Guan's words and wanted to speak but stopped himself. He had a suspicion in his heart. Could it be that Martial Master was secretly watching, which is why Guan dared to be so reckless? He also hadn't noticed Guan concealing his cultivation level, so he didn't think Guan had the ability to fight. More and more disciples watched from a distance, not daring to get closer, only able to discuss from afar. Guan walked around Ji Xiaoyu and approached the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. Ji Xiaoyu grabbed his wrist, trying to persuade him, but Guan just smiled at her and gently pulled his hand away. "Well, I am. How do you want to challenge me?" Guan looked at the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and asked with a smile. He was giving the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch a chance. If he answered poorly, he would perish along with his cultivation. After all, Dahong Sword Heaven was Yang Pingan's Taoist tradition, and by seniority, the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was also his disciple. As a martial master, how could he kill a fellow sect member upon meeting? The Zhu Luo Sword Monarch raised his right hand, condensing sword intent in his palm, resembling a thread of lightning, neither dazzling nor enormous, yet it made everyone terrified. This thread of sword intent contained extremely terrifying power, making people shudder. Ji Xiaoyu, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, the nine-finger divine lord, and others didn't even dare to move, feeling a terrifying sensation that any movement could lead to death. And Hao clenched his fists inside his sleeves, ready to make a move. Long Qing stood at a distance, on tiptoe, watching. He couldn't feel the sword intent of the Zhu Luo sword monarch, but with so many people gathered, how could he not be curious? Naturally. Well, compare the sword Dao to see whose sword Dao is stronger. Show your holy heart sword Dao. The Zhu Luo sword monarch coldly stated. Holy heart sword Dao. Ji Xiaoyu and the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor both drastically changed their expressions, looking at Guan in astonishment. They had heard of the great fame of the Holy Heart Sword Dao, a supreme inheritance of Dahong Sword Heaven, able to dominate across 3,000 worlds and be invincible. Guan had actually inherited the Holy Heart Sword Dao? No wonder Sword Venerable Fu Dao refused to show his true self. It turns out he was a great cultivator from Dahong Sword Heaven. In any great heaven and earth, there was no one who could silently reach the free immortal realm. Just the heavenly tribulation from divine thought true immortal to free immortal would shake the universe. How could one hide? Hearing the words of the Zhu Luo sword monarch, Guan showed a faint smile. His smile, however, appeared as a provocation in the eyes of the Zhu Luo sword monarch. Just then, Guan suddenly shifted, appearing instantly in front of the Zhu Luo sword monarch. The gust of air lifted the Zhu Luo sword monarch's cloak, and he widened his eyes. Challenge the Holy Heart Sword Dao? Guan slightly raised his chin, looking at the Zhu Luo sword monarch with indifferent eyes, as if he were looking down on an ant. With his left hand, he then grabbed the Zhu Luo sword monarch's wrist. The entire process went unchallenged by the Zhu Luo sword monarch. It wasn't that he couldn't react, but he was unable to resist. With Guan holding him, the Zhu Luo sword monarch's pupils dilated, and his heart was struck with shock. Guan looked at him and slowly said, "Let's not first discuss whether I possess the Holy Heart Sword Dao. To you all, what status does the Holy Heart Sword Dao even have? Are you even qualified to challenge the Holy Heart Sword Dao?" These words struck the Zhu Luo sword monarch like a hammer, causing his body to tremble, and cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. Everyone else could feel Guan's dominance, and what surprised them most was how the usually arrogant Zhu Luo sword monarch had suddenly become mute. And Hao was the most shocked and unable to stay composed. He knew too well how strong the Zhu Luo sword monarch was. A mere breath from him could annihilate a cultivator in the nascent soul realm. Although he hadn't felt Guan's aura now, he knew something must have happened that made the Zhu Luo sword monarch dare not retaliate. Or rather, the Zhu Luo sword monarch simply couldn't retaliate. Chapter 444 Master, I want to be the heavenly emperor under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Zhu Luo sword monarch trembled all over, unable to speak. All gazes fell on Guan's hand, which held the wrist of Zhu Luo sword monarch. At that moment, Zhu Luo sword monarch's aura was not a match for Guan, almost as if he was about to kneel at any moment. Guan's face was so cold, and his gaze, falling into the eyes of Zhu Luo sword monarch, was terrifying. How can this be? The thought of utter disbelief crossed the mind of Zhu Luo sword monarch. Held by Guan, his sword intent dissipated instantly, and the mana within him was suppressed, rendering him unable to mobilize it. He was like a mortal, incapable of resistance, let alone freeing himself of Guan's grasp. Tao Fruit Realm. This person must have surpassed the free immortal realm and reached an even higher level. Despite Zhu Luo sword monarch's claim to have reached the end of the reincarnation tribulation, in reality, he had yet to find his breakthrough opportunity. This was also why he wanted to challenge the Holy Heart Sword Dao. He hoped to break his own limits through the swordsmanship exchange. The stronger the inheritor of the Holy Heart Sword Dao, the more he looked forward to it. Only tremendous pressure could break his shackles. Guan stared at him and asked, "Now tell me, do you still want to challenge me?" Zhu Luo sword monarch clenched his teeth, attempting to speak, but he lacked the courage to voice his words. For him to bow his head was harder than death. Damn it! Why was the gap so vast? Zhu Luo sword monarch harbored a secret hatred, not towards Guan, but at his own weakness. With such a vast difference in strength, his challenge to Guan seemed absurd. He despised those who were weak yet acted arrogantly, and now he was the very person he loathed the most. Zhu Luo sword monarch was extremely frustrated. He roared inwardly, wanting his sword Dao to break free. But Gu An's power was like a wall of the Tao fruit realm, crushing him mercilessly. No matter how furious, he couldn't shake it. For a moment, the atmosphere was tense. The pressure on everyone vanished, replaced by shock. Could it be that Guan was truly sword venerable Fu Dao? They couldn't sense how strong Gu An's aura was, still seeming like he was in the nascent soul realm. However, Guan was clearly suppressing Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, and Zhu Luo Sword Monarch's earlier arrogance and haughtiness could not have been an act. And Hao was shocked. He looked at Gu An's retreating figure with complex emotions. Astonishment, delight, apprehension. Just then, Guan suddenly let go, smiling and saying, "Since you're not speaking, I'll take it you've given up the challenge. Guests should be treated well. Stay at the Third Medicine Valley for a few days." Zhu Luo Sword Monarch felt the suffocating pressure lift instantly. His first instinct was to flee, but he resisted. If the other party didn't kill him, would fleeing not bring shame to the Dahong Sword Heaven? Looking at Gu An's gentle smile, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch didn't know how to respond and wished he could vanish into thin air. Guan turned around and beckoned to an Xian, who immediately ran over. "Accommodate this Taoist friend," said Guan, then turned and left. Ji Xiaoyu stared at Guan in a daze, once again astonished by his strength. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch was stronger than her true body, and such a being was completely suppressed by Guan to the point that he couldn't even speak. How high was his cultivation level, really? Others too were shocked by Gu An's cultivation level and conceived speculations about his realm. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch watched Gu An's departing figure, his face flushed with humiliation. When an Xian invited him into the valley, he could only nod and follow her. Although he was suppressed by Guan, no one dared to mock him. As he walked by, the great cultivators made way, fearing they might provoke his anger. And Hao kept pace with Gu An's steps without catching up immediately, maintaining a distance instead. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stood by Ji Xiaoyu's side and pondered, "Who exactly is this deity?" Ji Xiaoyu did not answer him, and no one else could either. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord was relieved that he hadn't underestimated Guan due to his cultivation level. Xianxia thought even further ahead. Faced with the provocation of Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, Guan had the power to kill him yet chose to give him a way out. Such magnanimity was beyond the capacity of ordinary individuals. This was the very path Xianxia himself should pursue. On another side, Long Qing ran over to Gu An's side, walking shoulder to shoulder with him, occasionally glancing back at An Hao. He could tell An Hao seemed to want to talk to Guan and was adopting a very humble posture. "Master, what just happened?" Long Qing asked curiously. His gaze followed and fixed on Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, whose presence was so powerful. Just walking down the road, he exuded an air of invincibility, as if even the heavens couldn't contain him. Guan smiled and said, "Nothing much, just chatted with someone. You can go talk to him directly. He is a senior after all. Remember not to forget your manners." Hearing Gu An's words, Long Qing really did want to go meet with Zhu Luo Sword Monarch. After a while, Guan went upstairs alone, and An Hao stayed at the bottom of the loft, hesitating for a moment before he also went upstairs. He had just reached the door when he heard Guan's voice. "Remember to close the door behind you." Upon hearing this, An Hao instantly felt calm. All his doubts were washed away. This was definitely his master. Suppressing his excitement, he closed the door. He strode to the table and then knelt down, kowtowing to Guan. Guan did not stop him, graciously accepting his gesture of respect. An Hao looked up at Guan and exclaimed excitedly, "Master, you've kept me in the dark for so long. No wonder you took an Xian as a disciple. You've been looking after her all along. Hasn't she known all this time?" Guan smiled and replied, "She didn't know at the beginning. She was just as excited as you when she found out. Stand up and speak." And Hao hurriedly stood up. He had too many things to tell his master. Guan invited him to sit down and then inquired about his experiences over the years. And Hao did not dare to hide anything. He did not overly embellish his narrative, sharing both his hardships and achievements. After a long time, Guan asked, "What are your goals for the future?" Unlike an Xian, An Hao had been wandering outside for years, and his ambition only grew higher and higher, so Guan had no intention of keeping him. Taking a deep breath, Anhao said, "Master, I want to become the Heavenly Emperor, just like the Jade Emperor you've written about." Guan smiled and said, "Those two words should not be uttered carelessly because real immortals do exist. Indeed, to be besieged by immortals, real immortals are far more terrifying than mortals can imagine. If there is order, there must be a ruler, and the leader of the immortals might be known as the Heavenly Emperor." Upon hearing this, Anhao was startled and cautiously asked, "Immortal dynasty?" "They are far from it." Guan's response let Anhao breathe a sigh of relief and also filled him with surprise. If the immortal dynasty was not considered a group of immortals, how powerful were the true immortals? Guan looked at Anhao and also discerned his life grid. Life grid, the combination of fate and chi fortune, indicates that the stronger the life grid, the better the chi fortune and longer lifespan. Anhao had a continuous stretch of chi fortune, and his life seemed to have no visible end, which Guan saw for the first time in such a life grid. Indeed, the limit of 9,999 years was simply the upper limit of mortal realm, not the limit for Anhao. After reaching the Nirvana realm, Anhao's lifespan limit became 6 nines, and Guan estimated that breaking through further great realms would continue to extend it. Reaching the corner of the staircase, he turned his head toward Guan and asked, "What kind of person do you hope I will become?" Guan glanced at him and then looked up to the east, saying, "I hope you become like that proud sun, radiant and shining. Even if you fall into the lowest valleys, you always rise up, climbing to a height that all living beings find unreachable." After hearing this, Anhao unconsciously looked towards the rising sun on the horizon. His smile faded, his expression turning serious. Within the lifespan samsara, Long Zhan had once surpassed him, and he believed that a reincarnation body could possibly surpass the original self. His curiosity aroused, if his reincarnation body continued to grow, what would happen? Guan was merely curious and felt no urge to experiment. For the time being, he had no desire to open another lifespan samsara because he was saving up his lifespan for the next breakthrough. Although no existence threatened him at the moment, he couldn't relax. He had to maintain his progression in strength, not wait for an unbeatable foe to arrive before starting to regret. With these thoughts in mind, he made his way towards 10,000 Sword Mountain. A meteor streaked across the sky, caught perfectly by his gaze. Another free immortal has descended. It seemed it wouldn't take many years for another earth-shattering war to erupt. But there had been many such wars in recent years, with high-level beings fighting outside of heaven, clearly all fearing they might shatter the great heavenly spirit land. Guan's gaze then shifted towards the depths of the cosmos. The Black City, created by the Annihilation God Emperor, was still devouring Tao's spiritual energy, and Guan could sense a faint power gathering inside it. The Annihilation God Emperor seemed to be refining some kind of supreme treasure, but it was unknown whether it was an immortal path supreme treasure. Was he trying to force Long Qing out by using this treasure? Guan pondered curiously in his heart. He wasn't in a hurry at all. As long as the true form of the Annihilation God Emperor didn't appear, he felt no fear. For Guan, time was even more important. He made his way to Sword Mountain, where treasure swords covered the mountain, reflecting sharp sword lights under the sunlight. Stepping up the mountain, he touched every sword hilt along his path, infusing each with a sword intent of different swordsmanship. The swords he touched would instantly lose their luster, seeming to lose their spirit, but in reality, they were being nurtured by the sword intent, with the underground spiritual energy altering the essence of the swords. After a while, Guan reached the mountain peak. Looking down upon all the swords, his figure was noticed by Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, who was under a distant tree. Since coming to Third Medicine Valley, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch had not left. He acted properly, no longer arrogant and imposing. He wanted to understand Guan. Although Guan didn't acknowledge that he had inherited the Holy Heart Sword Dao, instinct told the Sword Monarch that Guan must be connected to it. Perhaps it was because of the relationship between the Holy Heart Sword Dao and Ahong Sword Heaven that Guan had spared him. Putting himself in Guan's shoes, the way he had previously addressed Guan was enough to warrant death 10,000 times over. Chapter 446. Pure land under heaven. Su Jie had been feeling quite stifled, but seeing the Zhu Luo sword monarch reassessing him, hope rekindled in his heart. Do you want to learn the most superior swordsmanship? The Zhu Luo sword monarch asked seriously. Upon hearing this, Su Jie quickly responded, Of course I do. Would the senior be willing to teach me? The Zhu Luo sword monarch raised his right hand, and a piece of silvery white jade appeared between his fingers. He tossed the jade to Su Jie, who caught it instinctively. If you can comprehend the swordsmanship contained within this, I will pass on my sword Dao to you. After that, dominating the great heavenly spirit land will certainly not be difficult, the Zhu Luo sword monarch said calmly. Upon hearing these words, Su Jie immediately bent at the waist to bow and thank the Zhu Luo sword monarch. The Zhu Luo sword monarch waved his hand, indicating that Su Jie could leave. Su Jie didn't dare to linger and turn to leave. Yet, he couldn't help but glance toward Guan. He wasn't foolish. The Zhu Luo sword monarch had clearly been impatient just moments ago, but after looking at Guan his attitude changed completely, indicating that it was only because of Guan's face that he agreed to impart his swordsmanship to Su Jie. This made Su Jie's feelings even more complex. He was very grateful to Guan and even wanted to thank him, but he felt like there was an invisible wall between himself and Guan that was very difficult to cross. Meanwhile, Guan was still standing on 10,000 Sword Mountain, deducing fates and cause and effect. He saw many people coming and going at the foot of the mountain. These were visions of the future. Inheriting the memories of Xianxia, his understanding of the sword Dao and fate was profound. Using the sword intent of 10,000 Sword Mountain to deduce the future, he could see the shadows of times far away. Suddenly, he spotted a figure standing still at the foot of the mountain, looking up at him. Guan slightly raised his eyebrows, focusing on the figure, his eyes revealing a hint of surprise. He deduced that this figure in 10,000 Sword Mountain had the closest connection of fate. This individual would inherit all the sword intent of 10,000 Sword Mountain and even boost its chi fortune. He could even deduce the person's name and identity. A talent like this in the new epoch, Guan thought to himself, feeling somewhat emotional. The talent of this individual in the sword Dao was extremely terrifying, almost like he was seeing another Xianxia. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this individual's talent was even stronger than Anhao's. Regrettably, he wasn't born in the same epoch as Anhao. By the time he came into this world, Anhao had already become the most dazzling sun in the heavens. He could also prepare a gift for Zhu Shi and take the opportunity to apologize to Guan, thereby increasing his chances for more interaction. A smile spread across Elder Li's face as he suddenly found Zhu Shi rather agreeable. On the other side, Zhu Shi couldn't help but ask why Guan was looking for her, but an Xian said she didn't know either. You don't have to worry. If my master has noticed you, it must mean he has a good impression of you. Maybe he will even take you as his disciple. Just settle in comfortably as if it was your own home. And if you encounter any problems in the future, you can come to me. I forgot to tell you, I am the head disciple of the valley and in charge of everything, an Xian said, turning her head towards Zhu Shi with a gentle smile. Zhu Shi was touched by her smile, warming up to her and feeling her stress dissipate. With such a kind personality, the valley master might indeed be a rare good person. Zhu Shi thought to herself. Although Nzin's cultivation level was only at the nascent soul realm, she didn't look down on her. Instead, Zhu Shi wanted to deepen their friendship. An Xian thought to herself, she doesn't seem to recognize my master. Could she be the offspring of one of my master's old friends? She did not think of Zhu Shi as a genius. When she said Guan might take Zhu Shi as a disciple, it was just a habit of making big promises, something she learned from Guan. A few kind words didn't cost anything, and maybe she could forge a closer relationship. The two women chatted warmly as they proceeded. Underneath an old tree, Zhu Luo sword monarch stood up, looking at the commotion in the distance, and muttered, "Such clamor!" Suddenly, he caught sight of someone, causing him to exclaim in surprise. It was a white-haired old man, leaning on a cane in one hand and resting the other on his waist, just entering the valley and looking around. The free immortal. Reincarnation tribulation. This aura feels so familiar, as if I've seen it somewhere. Zhu Luo sword monarch pondered to himself, his eyes fixed on the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man seemed to sense something, turned his head to look, and when he saw Zhu Luo sword monarch, his white eyebrows furrowed. A figure flew from the horizon and swiftly landed in front of Gu En. It was none other than LV Xian. Wearing a vestment robe crafted by Li Xiandao, LV Xian had an impressive demeanor, like an immortal lord descending to the mortal world, causing the surrounding cultivators to subconsciously make way. When LV Batian saw him, his eyes lit up, wondering if Guan was about to elevate his son. That would be fantastic. Guan, come with me. Let's talk. What's there to discuss with these old geezers? LV Xian spoke disrespectfully, immediately causing quite a few people to frown. LV Batian frowned and said sternly, "Presumptuous. Have you not learned any manners following Li Xiandao?" As the crowd used sound transmission to communicate, their displeasure dissipated upon learning that LV Xian was LV Batian's son. LV Xian's fame was no small matter, and he was among the top talents of the supreme sect. LV Xian, who had already reached the Mahayana realm, had a presence even stronger than that of an ordinary Mahayana cultivator. LV Xian ignored LV Batian, grabbed Guan, and started walking outside. Guan could only apologize to the others before following LV Xian away. After they left, the crowd began to congratulate LV Batian. Although he gestured for them not to speculate wildly, the smile on his face could hardly be concealed. An ancient hour later, everyone gathered in the bustling loft area of the Third Medicine Valley. Guan stood on a hastily built platform, addressing the crowd. Looking down from the platform, the place was bursting with people. Zhu Shi, Su Jia, Wu Ju, Shen Zhan, and others were also among the crowd, curious to see how Guan would create an immortal. "I have prepared a grand ceremony for this spring festival. I thought I had hidden it well, but the news somehow spread. Yes, I am creating an immortal," Guan said with a smile, followed by good-natured laughter from below. Long Qing maintained a solemn face, pretending not to know who leaked the news. "Today, I want you all to witness the process of transcendence and hope it helps with your future cultivation," Guan stated earnestly as he scanned the crowd. He saw Ji Xiaoyu staring at him and even deliberately winked at her. Unfortunately, she did not respond. At this moment, Ji Xiaoyu was simply curious about how Guan was going to create an immortal. She even wished he would just start and spare them the idle chat. Guan spoke at length before finally getting to the point. He simply said, "Bull Demon King." As soon as his words ended, the Blood Prison Great Saint immediately leaped onto the stage from the side, proudly stepping towards Guan, enjoying everyone's gaze. The crowd below paid no attention to the Blood Prison Great Saint, assuming Guan had called him up for something unrelated to immortal creation. After all, what did a core formation realm demon creature have to do with becoming an immortal? Chapter 449. Is there a second person in the world? Blood Prison Great Saint arrived before Guan and reverently knelt down, as if he were about to prostrate himself. Seeing him maintaining such an attitude at this time warmed Guan's heart. His efforts in raising him had not been in vain. "His name is Bull Demon King, huh? Don't tell me there's also a son Wukong? Ha! Don't underestimate him. He's quite cunning. Indeed, when I first touched his horns, he wanted to retaliate against me." "Shush, you can't speak about such things. Why would you send a bull to do it, to kill him as a part of the celebration for immortal creation?" The cultivators and disciples below spectated and speculated, some comments stirring the Blood Prison Great Saint's fur to stand on end in anger. Guan didn't mind it, for the Blood Prison Great Saint's attitude was inseparable from his own harsh words. Aside from Guan, nobody liked them, much like the white spirit rat. It was time to begin. That's what Guan thought, his eyes turning fierce. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Guan took out the fate-determining pen, allowing it to spin in his hand before gripping it firmly, the tip pointed at Blood Prison Great Saint. Everyone's gaze followed suit, falling upon Blood Prison Great Saint, unsure of what Guan was about to do. Today, I shall let my mount transform into the immortal realm. Everyone, watch closely. Gu An's voice sounded, echoing through the third medicine valley. Upon hearing this, everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. He intends to elevate this demon bull to the immortal realm? Impossible. In that moment, even Zhu Luo Sword Monarch and the white-robed elder furrowed their brows. Ji Xiaoyu and Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor likewise found it unbelievable. Their higher realms of existence made them acutely aware of how difficult it was to leap from the core formation realm to the nirvana realm. Even with great powers pouring in their essence or imparting cultivation levels, it was impossible. No matter how they looked at it, Blood Prison Great Saint didn't seem like a great power reincarnated. There were no traces of reincarnation tribulations cause and effect, nor any signs of a hidden stronger cultivation level. LV Batian was stunned. Even found it ridiculous. Could this uncultured bull also achieve immortality? The crowd below fell silent, and before anyone could react, Guan wielded his pen, sprinkling ink onto the body of Blood Prison Great Saint. Instantly, the seal of path of returning primordial spirit within Blood Prison Great Saint dissipated, and he felt that long-lost power surge through him. His entire bovine body ignited. Primordial reincarnation skill. Release. The bull's head shrank rapidly, revealing a handsome and unruly face. His arrogance even more pronounced than that of An Hao and LV Xian. The once invincible Blood Prison Great Saint, who had dominated his own great heaven and earth, had returned. Underneath the mystic pure tree, a plump white spirit rat held a fruit. Staring blankly at the figure of the Blood Prison Great Saint, the fruit fell to the ground unnoticed. An Xian stood at the edge of the platform, looking at the true form of the Blood Prison Great Saint and secretly marveled. So this is what he looks like? Or is he imitating Master? But no matter how I look at it, Master is more handsome. Even with that bull's head donning a handsome appearance, it still seems punchable. Feeling the quickly intensifying aura of the Blood Prison Great Saint, Anzin's competitive spirit was spurred. One day, she would become stronger than the Blood Prison Great Saint, and she would even surpass her senior brother, An Hao. The heavenly tribulation was about to arrive, and all the people in the valley were not frightened by its might. They all stared blankly at the Blood Prison Great Saint. It was unclear who spoke first, but the third medicine valley instantly became like a pot boiling over, the clamor bursting forth, threatening to overturn the heavens. How is that possible? Has the demon bull really become an immortal? He is not just a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao, he is Sword Venerable Fudao. My heavens! How did he do it? Could it be that this bull was always an immortal? Immortal my ass, I've known the Bull Demon King for 500 years, watching him nap every day. Can an immortal do that? That's right, this bull has indeed been around for a long time, not just a recent appearance. Everyone was immensely excited, fervently discussing the Blood Prison Great Saint, and Gu An's gaze turned towards the heavens, sensing a powerful presence rushing from the silent destruction domain. It was the aura of the heavenly demon, stronger than the Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, truly half a step into the Tao Fruit realm. The heavenly demon emperor. Interesting. Gu An's eyes sparkled, his thoughts playful. In the dim great hall, the sickly green candlelight flickered as if demons were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. The Annihilation God Emperor sat cross-legged on a large cauldron, surrounded by a misty fog that faintly revealed swirling ghosts. His face remained pitch black as if a black hole, his true features unseen. Come in. The Annihilation God Emperor spoke, his tone indifferent. As his words fell, a surge of demonic chi bubbled from the darkness ahead, quickly approaching him. It was the Heavenly Demon Emperor. The Heavenly Demon Emperor stood in front of the cauldron, looking up at the Annihilation God Emperor perched above, and asked, Divine Emperor, are you waiting for a descendant of the Dragon Clan?